Chapter 298, Selling Ginseng and Ganoderma. Chapter 298, Selling Ginseng and Ganoderma. Reverie _ Lian Xiaozhu and Hua Jiao Yi battled fiercely. The two were at two extremes. One was an expert in fist intent, only one punch back and forth, while the other was magnificent in saber techniques, with infinite changes. Who knew how many saber techniques he learned? One extremely simple and one extremely mixed, yet each could increase battle prowess far beyond one's own tier. They were both in the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, although their battle prowess hadn't reached a level so exaggerated as the Spiritual Ocean tier. It was at least 15 stars. Normally, it was not bad if one's battle prowess surpassed one's tier by 2 stars, and having 3 to 4 stars could be called a genius, while 5 to 6 stars was definitely a super genius. In Ling Han's previous life, geniuses that surpassed 5 stars were considerably rare, but only freaks like Sword Emperor and Heaven Phoenix Divine Maiden could surpass 10 stars. However, in this life, Ling Han had already seen several geniuses that surpassed 5 stars, and there hasn't been anyone with 10 stars yet, but that was limited to the 9 nations of the desolate north. Who knew how many geniuses were left in the north region, which was also the weakest area in martial arts? No, there was a freak that surpassed 10 stars. One who knew. He forgot about the little girl since she always stuck to his side. He subconsciously forgot her. After fighting for 10 minutes or so, Cheng Fei Jun stopped the battle. He had the mission to find the brightest ones today, so he naturally couldn't watch these two fight till dark. Under his directions, everyone stepped forward to challenge others. Since the field was large enough, several people carried out fierce battles at the same time. Everyone naturally could see which battles had more value. There really were a few bright new stars, but it made sense. The desolate north had a total of 9 countries, and since the rain country had geniuses like Zhao Huan and Ken Yi, why would other countries not have geniuses? This was not counting Yang Tianzhao, Hu Niu, and Feng Yang. A total of 7 people left a deep impression in Ling Han's mind. Other than Lian Xiaozhu and Hua Jiao Yi, there were 3 men and 2 women, Bai Yu Quan, Yu Xinghua, Zhong He Guang, Chu Shui Yun, and Yuan Lian Shan, respectively. Among them, Bai Yu Quan and Yu Shui Yun were the strongest. Although they were only at 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, their battle prowess reached 16 stars, making Ling Han feel as if he saw the young Sword Emperor and Heaven Phoenix Divine Maiden. Of course, those two were still too inexperienced, and way less freakish than Sword Emperor and Heaven Phoenix Divine Maiden. Moreover, the lower the tier, the easier it was to battle above one's level. If they reached the Flower Blossom tier and still possessed battle prowess that surpassed 5 stars, then that would truly be incredible. Ken Yi and Hua Jiao Yi sparred in the end. While Ken Yi had a slight upper hand, if it were a life and death match, then it would be hard to say what the final result would be. Sparring was sparring after all, and no one would truly use his or her ultimate moves. Haha, everyone, stop for a moment. Drink some tea, eat some desserts, and continue sparring afterwards. Cheng Fei Jun stood up again and stopped the sparring momentarily, then had people serve up desserts and the like. Ling Han gave Zhu Wuju a sign. Zhu Wuju immediately stood up, carrying a large wicker basket on his back, and began to shout, "Selling ginseng and Ganoderma, selling ginseng and Ganoderma." Pu, quite a few people immediately burst into laughter. This was a martial arts tea party. And you're actually yelling out and selling things. Did you think this is a food market? Cheng Fei Jun naturally saw Ling Han at the scene, and Zhu Wuju was at the same table as Ling Han, so Cheng Fei Jun subconsciously assumed that Ling Han intentionally had someone stir up trouble. Cheng Fei Jun was infuriated, feeling detest for Ling Han for going against him at every turn. This is a distinguished marital arts meeting. Who dares to start trouble? Cheng Fei Jun said coldly. Selling ginseng and Ganoderma. Selling ginseng and Ganoderma. Zhu Wuju paid absolutely no attention to him, simply shouting out loudly. Who is this guy daring not to give Master Cheng face publicly? Many people didn't recognize Zhu Wuju, immediately beginning to ask others. He, this is one of our rain country's men called Zhu Wuju. Zhu Wuju. Is he strong? He's not strong, but the person he follows is impressive. Ling Han, Master Ling. Master Ling? You don't know? Master Ling is an Earth-grade alchemist. Quite a few people were instantly stupefied. An Earth-grade alchemist in any country was more kick-ass than any big shot. No wonder Zhu Wuju dared not to give Cheng Fei Jun for Seihei had an Earth-grade alchemist behind him, thus certainly had the capacity to do that. However, this brought on everyone's curiosity. The quality of the ginseng and Ganoderma that this guy was selling shouldn't be too bad, right? Come, let me see, someone immediately said. Zhu Wuju hurriedly greeted smilingly, opening the wicker basket and handing over a ginseng and a Ganoderma. Such pure medicinal power. Everyone seated here was from a large family or a large force, so their judgment naturally wasn't poor. They normally ate such tonic food like ginseng and Ganoderma. From smelling the medicinal fragrance, they knew that this ginseng and Ganoderma were extremely aged. At least several dozen years of age. He made a judgment. Sure, hearing this, many people immediately circled around. They naturally wouldn't care about normal ginseng and Ganoderma, but those aged several dozens of years would surprise them. It could largely restore origin chi, something of great use. No. Someone immediately shook their heads. This isn't just 100 years, it's reached the level of 100. Certainly. Many more people expressed agreement. 100-year-old ginseng? Ganoderma? Everyone immediately revealed an exulted expression, and more people rushed over with intention of buying some. 10 origin crystals for one. Zhu Wuju quoted a price. Normally, if a price was not stated, then it meant 1 origin power crystal as was the customary convention. 10 origin crystals. This price was very high since one spiritual ocean tier cultivator could only form 1 origin crystal a month, only 10 a year too. I'll offer 10, give me. No, I'll offer 12, it's mine. I'll offer 13. Everyone immediately began to fight over the goods. These were good things for nurturing the body and origin, also, they were good for recovering from hidden injuries, which martial artists commonly suffered on even a daily basis. Not auctioning. There are many ginsengs and Ganoderma, as long as you have origin crystals, you'll have a share. Zhu Wuju said, face full of smiles. What the heck, there were many. This was ginseng and Ganoderma, and not cabbage. Hey, I want the 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma, don't you take a 5, 6, or 10-year one to trick me, someone immediately said. How's that possible? Master Ling's reputation is not enough to assure you. Zhu Wuju immediately brought up Ling Han mainly to intimidate them in case someone tried to take it forcefully, wasting time to incite trouble. As expected, hearing the words Master Ling, some who had ill intentions immediately withdrew such thoughts. That was an Earth-grade alchemist, and if he went to his country to express discontent, it was guaranteed that the current emperor would immediately become infuriated. Here, everyone, as long as you've paid origin crystals, you can check for yourself. If the age is not sufficient, I'll immediately return the payment and gift the ginseng and Ganoderma to you. However, that's on the condition you do it before you leave, otherwise, some might intentionally do a switch to deceive me. I don't really care, but Master Ling's reputation can't be tarnished by others, Zhu Wuju said in a justified manner, intimidating those who still had ill intents. See a small explanation on Battlestar's in TL's thoughts if you're wondering about Battlestar's inconsistencies. EDN, I guess they have short years there, or someone stole the calendar from the narrator. Chapter 299, There's more after all's sold out. Chapter 299, There's more after all's sold out. Reverie _ Even if Zhu Wuju didn't speak of inspecting goods, everyone would never have overlooked it. It cost 10 origin power crystals after all. Those special crystals containing the origin power were very normal products produced in large amounts otherwise, with the market demand, they would already be used up, and it would be impossible for such large amounts of them to appear. There was a standard to origin crystals' size, they were the size of a finger. Also, rather than being a piece, they were more like sticks. But to fill this small origin power crystal, a spiritual ocean tier cultivator had to spend a month's time. This was the normal rate if a spiritual ocean tier cultivator expended all their origin power and recovered it through meditation and not through eating medicinal pills otherwise. It would be squandering family fortune, since medicinal pills were very expensive as well. Even spiritual ocean tier cultivators could only refine 12 pieces a year, so this thing was extremely precious and could reflect the value of the 100-year ginseng and Ganoderma. One after another, people paid origin power crystals to receive a stalk of ginseng or ganoderma, and hurriedly examined them closely. If they personally didn't understand, then they asked others on the side to appraise it, all of them revealing an exalted expression. It certainly was 100 years old. I still want to buy a stalk. I have money. I also want to buy 3 stalks. After confirming that the ginseng and ganoderma Zhuwu sold were genuine, everyone was extremely excited, brandishing their origin power crystals and barging in like local tyrants. These origin power crystals were actually given by their families or forces for emergency usage. After all, the currency that flowed through here was origin power crystal, while silver was used only between average people. In the 9 nations of the desolate north, the spiritual ocean tier warriors were definitely the pinnacle, so how could they possibly refine and condense origin power crystals all day? Thus, even the 8 great clans couldn't take out that many origin power crystals, what more normal families? Therefore, these people that threw 10 origin crystals at a time were simply willfully rich. Guang Yuan shook his head repeatedly as he watched, and said, if anyone dared to squander this lord's origin crystals like this lord would personally beat them to death. Ling Han sighed. You say it as if you've refined origin power crystals before. Pa, this lord doesn't even have time to cultivate, so how could I possibly waste origin power to do such a thing? Guang Yuan immediately spat out shamelessly without caring for his image at all. It made sense. Now that Ling Han was an Earth-grade alchemist, Guang Yuan's status was countless times lower than Ling Han's, so Guang Yuan naturally revealed his rowdiness as there was absolutely no need for him to put on airs of a senior or a powerhouse. Everyone laughed underneath their breaths. Guang Yuan might be rude, but he was also an interesting person. Everyone was disorderly crowded around Zhuwu, and the scene was extremely bustling. Some people didn't have 10 origin crystals on them, so they bargained with Zhuwu, while others were a bit more rich and imposing, saying that they were willing to add on to the price to have priority over the selling of the goods as they were afraid that ginseng and ganoderma would be sold out. Cheng Fei Jun's expression was gloomier and gloomier. The martial arts tea party he held was to pick out potential talents for Luo Jifeng to select, but not for Ling Han to sell good. He couldn't help but stand up and remind everyone that it was about time to continue sparring. However, no one paid attention to him. People saw the ability of several others previously, and knew there was no chance for most of them to obtain the first place. So, since there was only one prize for the number 1, why not focus on a treasure in their sight instead? Cheng Fei Jun almost cursed out. The tea party was held by him, and he was a high-level black-grade alchemist. Thou dare a group of mere gushing spring-tier martial artists not give him any face? But Ling Han was on the scene, so he as a high-level black-grade alchemist was really nothing great. So what if they didn't give any face? There was still Master Ling, right? This damned Ling Han, was he born to go against him? Cheng Fei Jun slumped into his seat, his gaze filled with fury. He was even feeling hate for Luo Jifeng now. That old man said he would get rid of Ling Han, but he had done nothing after so many days, letting Ling Han run around wildly perfectly fine. After several more hours, Zhuwu finally sold a whole basketful of spirit medicine, but there were still many people brandishing their origin power crystals, wishing to buy more. He looked at Ling Han, and seeing Ling Han nod, he then said, "Those friends who haven't bought any, don't worry. You can find me later at the inn's 7th courtyard. There will be large amounts of ginseng and ganoderma providida 100-year-old ones. I promise everyone will be satisfied." Only upon hearing that were those who hadn't bought any willing to leave. However, everyone was shocked. After a wicker basketful of spirit medicine was sold, there was still more. This was 100-year-old ginseng and ganoderma we were talking about, not some random cabbage. Normal people had a mere lifespan of 100 years, and nowadays, areas deep in the mountains were full of medicine harvesters, thus the amount of spirit medicines was becoming fewer and fewer. One would be grateful for being able to occasionally harvest one stalk of 100-year-old ginseng, but now a basketful was sold to them, and there was still more. Could they have dug up an ancient medicinal garden? Cheng Fei Jun's expression was like the fluctuating weather, filled with intense avarice. He thought that Ling Han must have found an ancient medicinal garden. Obtaining it along with a Grandmaster alchemist's heritage would explain both his supply of spirit medicine and his ability to become an earth-grade alchemist at such a young age. If he could obtain it, instantly, his heart was burning with inexhaustible desire, making him willing to take risks out of desperation. Guang Yuan took it all in, and said to Ling Han, that brat has aimed his killing intent at you. Ling Han laughed lightly, and said, no matter, a mere clown. I originally didn't care, but since he seeks death, then I'll send him on his way. I'll leave it to old brother Guang. Pu. Guang Yuan instantly spurted out and said faintly, that guy is still a high-level black-grade alchemist. If I kill him, then the whole world's alchemists would see me as the most hated person. Just do it cleanly. He's merely at the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier, and based on old brother Guang's cultivation of the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, you can definitely suppress him with one hand, with neither god nor ghosts finding out. Ling Han smiled. Guang Yuan received the complete large sun heaven heart scroll, and with Ling Han's provision of medicinal pills, his cultivation welcomed a small upsurge, reaching the peak of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, which was also unbelievable to even himself. All right, leave this guy to me, Guang Yuan said, clenching his teeth. He received so many benefits from Ling Han yet hadn't truly done anything for him, making him feel obliged to do something. Ling Han nodded. He truly didn't care for Cheng Fei Jun. As for Luo Jifeng, who almost blinded his eyes, he hadn't gone to peak again, so he didn't deeply understand this person. That old man's presence gave him a familiar feeling, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Chapter 300 – An elite cultivator suddenly appears. Chapter 300 – An elite cultivator suddenly appears. Reverie _ Selling ginseng came to an end. The martial arts tea party naturally continued, though quite a few people were still thinking about the 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma. They obviously appeared to be preoccupied, decreasing the excitement at the scene by a whole lot. Fortunately, Lian Xiuzhu, Bai Yu Quan, and the others took the field to spar again. Their splendid performance restored a bit of the excitement, winning the frequent cheers of masses, especially when their home country's martial artists saw their own country's genius demonstrating invincible might and beating the talents of other countries. They were hysterically excited. At last, a total of 8 strongest from a single country each arose: Lian Xiuzhu, Hua Jiao Yi, Bai Yu Quan, Yu Xinghua, Zhonghe Guang, Yu Shui Yun, Yuan Lianshan, and Ken Yi. Zhu Wuzhu was still a bit unskilled after all with the cultivation of only the 5th layer of the gushing spring tier. The only thing he could rely on was Silver Moon Body, while his own talent in martial arts barely qualified. He now only formed 2 flashes of sword chi, and was still a whole segment away from the title of a king. It just so happened that the 9 nations of the desolate north each had one amongst the strongest except the Cloud Country, making all the martial artists of that country embarrassed. There was no other way, since their skills were below that of others and martial artists spoke based on their strength. Ling Han, if you take the field, you alone can beat all 8 of them, Liu Yutong said in a bad mood. The number 1 in the desolate north should be the man she fancied. That's right. On this point, Li Sai-chan was naturally in the same trench as Liu Yutong. Hu Niu pat her chest and said, Niu will fight for Ling Han and take first place. As she said that, she jumped onto the field, instantly causing Ken Yi to turn pale. He'd suffered by the little girl's hand. No one in the gushing spring tier could cope with her speed. At the time, even Yang Tianzhao suffered greatly, forcing him to unleash an ultimate move and only winning with his strange threads that bound the little girl. However, he'd caught the little girl off her guard at that time. Hu Niu's strength had an apparent increase after that event, as she was now in the 5th layer of the gushing spring tier. If they were to fight again, the outcome of the battle would be very hard to predict. No matter if it were Ling Han or Hu Niu, if these 2 monsters took the field, they would definitely be invincible amongst the gushing spring tier warriors, and even low-level spiritual ocean tier opponents would only be swept away. Ling Han laughed aloud and said, Niu, don't scare little Ken Yi, can't you see his face is all pale? Everyone glanced at him, and upon confirming it, they couldn't help but laugh one after another. It truly was rare for this young man, who was always indifferent to people, to lose his calm. Hu Niu was so small and had absolutely no qualms with her actions. Even Ken Yi would have a headache. Cheng Fei Jun invited Can Yi and the other 7 to come up as he arranged their opponents. It just happened that 4 advanced from 8, and 2 advanced from 4, and at last the strongest would be decided, consummating the day's martial arts tea party. The first will definitely be our fire country's Lian Xiaozhu. Bullsh. Tea. In front of our rock country's Hua Gao Yi, everyone is trash. Shoo, shoo, shoo. With our wind countries by Yu Quan here, who would stand a single exchange? Personal glory was already elevated to a national level, everyone boosted the morale of the geniuses that won from their own country except Cloud Country where no one came out on top. This made their expressions look terrible. Liu Yu Tong and Li Sai Chan were very out of sorts. The one that should be in the limelight was Ling Han, and if he entered the fight, who would be his match? The quarterfinals should originally be carried out one by one, but Zhu Wuju started selling in the middle of the party. This delayed everything a lot, and now the 4 matches had to be carried out together. Ping, ping, pang, pang, the 8 people split into 4 groups and started to fight. The scene was extremely intense, instantly attracting everyone's attention, making them cry out from time to time and expressing acclaim for his or her performance. This trip truly wasn't for nothing, being able to see such splendid fights. Perhaps some of the arrogant and conceited youngsters would lose their haughtiness, realizing that not only their own country had geniuses that one could only look up at, even other countries had them too. Ha 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 ha, the mole crickets of the desolate north dare to hold a martial arts tea party, absurdly discussing martial arts. Truly laughable. A sharp voice resounded as a youngster took large strides, approaching with an expression of disdain. Who is it? Everyone turned their heads, even Can Yi and the other 7 stopped their battles. This person mocked the desolate north, striking a blow at all of the 9 countries' people. The white-clothed youngster was very handsome and his complexion was very delicate, giving people the urge to throw a punch at him. He was quite good at attracting aggro. On his waist hung 2 swords, which was quite rare. He took large strides over and said, "The monkeys of the desolate north, go back from where you came. The north region is not somewhere you can go. Who are you? What does it matter to you?" someone shouted out. The white-clothed youngster laughed proudly and said, "I forgot to introduce myself. Sigh, announcing my name in front of you mole crickets is simply a humiliation for I, Bao Xinran. Whatever, I think I won't announce my name." Pu. Many people instantly burst into laughter. "You said you wouldn't announce your name but you already announced it. Is your head all right? The one surnamed Bao, get lost." Someone snorted. Judging from Bao Xinrang's tone, he should belong to a force in the North region. For the desolate North, the North region was the true holy land of martial arts. Therefore, even if Bao Xinran spoke rudely, everyone chose to tolerate it somewhat. Bao Xinran picked his ears and said, "Who told me to get lost just now? Get out here and let me see. See if I won't shatter all of your teeth." "So what if I said it?" A tall and sturdy youngster stood out, his back like a tiger's and waist like a bear's, his height nearing 2 meters, his skin dark, he looked like a wild bear. Pang! Everyone's vision blurred, they only saw Bao Xinran vanish from his spot as a fist smashed onto the wild bear's face, directly sending him flying. That tall and sturdy youngster wanted to get up, but halfway, his whole head actually exploded. The headless body instantly lay down again, bleeding all over the ground. In that moment, a hush fell over the entire place. However, it was only an instant later that the crowd was burst into anger, wanting to flay and swallow Bao Xinran alive. "You're strong and so you've won, but was there a need to kill?" "Oops, I hit too hard. I originally planned to just knock out all his teeth. But, whatever, those who insult me deserve to die," Bao Xinran said indifferently, then picked his ears again. "Which dreg still wants to fight?" Everyone was silent. Although that person was only at the element gathering tier, Bao Xinran's assault was extremely shocking, since most of the gushing spring tier warriors present were unable to follow the attack with their eyes. If they personally faced it, then it would probably bode more ill than well. Moreover, this person's attack was ruthless, and under the circumstances when one wasn't sure of success, there truly was no one who dared to rashly go down onto field to fight him. "Brother Bao, this humble one has come to experience it himself." Zhong Higuang took large strides down onto the field. Oh, just you 8 were contending over the title of the strongest prodigy of the younger generation? I'm dying of laughter. Mere several mole crickets actually having the delusion of being called first in whatever, simply unaware of what is called number 1, Bao Xinran said coldly, ridiculing without hesitation. Sir, have you had enough? Zhong Higuang was greatly enraged, taking off the whip curled around his waist. Bao Xinran picked his ears, blew a breath at his finger and said, how about this, I'll use one finger, and if I can't kill you in 3 moves, then I'll kneel on the ground and call you grandpa. Arrogant, truly too arrogant. Using one finger to go against one of 8 great prodigies of the desolate north. Moreover, killing him within 3 moves. He utterly looked down on them, and not to mention if he could win or not, killing people at every turn was simply not taking the 9 nations of the desolate north seriously, right? Chapter 301 Who Dares to Resist? Chapter 301 Who Dares to Resist? Reverie _ Brother Zhong, kill him. Yes, kill him. We of the 9 nations of the desolate north aren't weaklings. The crowd was infuriated, but Cheng Fei Jun made no sound. He recognized the mark on Bao Xinran's sleeve. This was a large sect's disciple, so it wasn't worthwhile for him to offend the latter. Anyways, it was just Zhong Higuang, so what if he died? There were still many talents left, and it didn't matter if there was one less or one more. Ling Han frowned and said, Zhong Higuang's going to suffer. Why? Liu Yutong and Li Sai Chan asked with surprise. Because that little brat is already at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Guang Yuan followed. What? Liu Yutong and Li Sai Chan revealed a shocked expression at the same Tamir spiritual ocean tier warrior in his 20s. No way, one couldn't even be found in the rain country. Recently one certainly emerged. Feng Yang was one, and Yang Tianzhao was even younger, only 15. Normally speaking, people were over 30 before they entered the spiritual ocean tier. Even 30-year-old gushing spring tier warriors were already not bad. No wonder the people of the North region were so impressive. Any random person that came running out was a martial arts genius. This fight mustn't be fought. Zhu Wuju shot up onto his feet. This was definitely an unfair battle. Ling Han nodded and said, you go stop it, and have Kan Yi return. Yes. Zhu Wuju hurriedly left following the order, but it was already too late. Zhong Higuang was already unable to suppress his anger, lashing his whip at Bao Xinran. Shua, the long whip turned into a spirit snake as origin power surged and layers of ripples swept through the air, extremely shocking. Bao Xinran simply smiled coldly and pointed with a finger on his left hand. It was strangely accurate, touching the middle of the whip, and an even stronger origin power surged. The long whip was instantly softened as if it had been hit at its weakest point. Zhong Higuang was stunned. He was just about to bounce back by lashing his whip, but Bao Xinran already flew out. His speed was unusually fast. As his feet moved, he already appeared in front of Zhong Higuang, cracking a smile. Zhong Higuang was extremely panic-stricken and was about to attack without his whip, but Bao Xinran flicked at his forehead, and with a pa, he was instantly sent flying. When he was in midair, his head fiercely exploded, red and white stuff splashing everywhere. Hiss! Everyone shivered as they watched. This was one of the strongest prodigies of the 9 nations of the desolate north, but now he was killed like a mole cricket. How could they accept this? Frightened and trembling with fear, they started to wonder what the hell were they going to the Winter Moon sect for if the North region was filled with such monsters. In order to enter the mountain gates, they'd definition have to experience intense competition, and anyone could casually kill them. They came out to seek higher martial arts tiers, not to give their lives. In that instant, the thought of retreating occurred to quite a few people. Don't you guys think that it's most beautiful when a person's brain explodes? Bao Xinran said with a hint of indulgence, then changed to a chilly voice and said, it was truly unexpected for me that you mole crickets of the desolate north can actually be this beautiful when dying. Truly inconceivable. This wasn't a compliment, and it enraged everyone. However, thinking about the other party's strength, no one dared to clamor. You're not at the gushing spring tier. Yu Shuai Yun said. Zhong Higuang was at the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, and it would be impossible for anyone at the Gushing Spring tier to kill him in 2 moves. Only one at the Spiritual Ocean tier had such ability. Pa, 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 Bao Shinran started to clap his hands and said with smile, finally a smart one. Of course I couldn't possibly be a Gushing Spring tier warrior. How could a prodigy like me already at the age of 25 possibly be a dreg at the Gushing Spring tier? The Spiritual Ocean tier, everyone cried out, and became extremely furious at the same time. What was a Spiritual Ocean tier expert coming here to sadistically kill the Gushing Spring tier warriors trying to do? Bao Shinran stepped down. Lines of fabric expanded, forming a green sign. Martial intent manifesting outside the mark of a Spiritual Ocean tier. Sir, you've gone too far. A dignified Spiritual Ocean tier expert hiding his cultivation and killing people at every turn. Don't you think bullied us intolerably? Bai Yu Quan said with power and resonance. Good. Well said. Everyone cheered him on. One at the Spiritual Ocean tier shouldn't bully people like this. And it wasn't as if there weren't any Spiritual Ocean tier warriors in the 9 nations of the desolate north. Bao Shinran picked his ear and said, gone too far what? I'm the same age as you guys. As for why my tier is higher and my strength surpasses you guys, this is because my talent is greater, and you're all just dregs. As dregs, you should have the resolution of being stepped on by me. Utterly detestable. Go at him together, at worst few dozens will die, but we have to kill him no matter what. Yes, we of the 9 nations of the desolate north aren't to be trifled with. Bao Shinran's provocations finally made everyone suppress their fear, and only endless rage remained. They had to kill this arrogant guy no matter what to vent their anger. Oh, kill me. Bao Shinran sneered, raised his left hand high up, circled it around everyone and said, Dregs, do you see this mark? This is the Cold Water Sect sleeve mark. I am a disciple of the Cold Water Sect. Not to mention whether you guys can kill me or not, even if you pull it off, not only will you guys die, but also the families behind you will die and even your country will be destroyed. Because I am the Cold Water Sect's disciple, understand, you dregs. Bao Shinran loftily placed his left hand down. Now, which dreg is still not convinced? In an instant, the entire crowd lost its voice. The Spiritual Ocean tier was of course nothing unified, they could still kill him while putting up a desperate fight. But the Cold Water Sect. Being called a sect meant that there was at least one spiritual infant tier cultivator guarding it, and that was an unimaginable power. Even those with great valor had to consider their families and their own country behind them. What kind of calamity would it be if they attracted a leviathan like the Cold Water Sect? Now, get back to your kennels. Whoever dares to leave the fallen moon gorge, I'll cut off their damn head. Bao Shinran said coldly. This time, everyone finally knew that the other party intentionally stopped them from entering the North region. At this critical juncture, there were only 2 possibilities. First, Bao Shinran didn't want them to attend the auction tomorrow, and second, he didn't want them to attend the Winter Moon Sect's entrance exam. Or both were possible. What are you all still so hesitant about? Bao Shinran glared. His personal strength could crush them, and on top of the Leviathan, the Cold Water Sect, which stood behind his back, he naturally had the confidence to be unbridled. Damn it! Everyone clenched their fists tightly, so tightly that their bones made a crackling sound. Were so many of them actually going to go back home with their tails between their legs just because of a youngster? That's right, I think I also heard earlier that there are many 100-year ginseng and ganodermas. Bao Shinran revealed a smile and greed flashed before his gaze. Before leaving, leave all the ginseng, ganoderma, and origin power crystals. If anyone dares to stash it, I'll kill them no matter what. The crowd was in uproar. Chapter 302, Asking Grandmaster Ling to Act. Chapter 302, Asking Grandmaster Ling to Act. He'd gone too far. Not only was he chasing them back to the desolate north, he was actually planning on robbing them as well. Grandmaster Cheng, don't you plan on saying anything? Someone asked Cheng Fei Jun. The latter was the organizer of this martial arts tea party, and now that something like this happened, how could the host simply just stand by and watch? Since he was pointed out by this person, Cheng Fei Jun could only stand up and say, Bao Shinran, This is the fallen moon gorge and the territory of our Star Brilliance Palace Hall. Is it really proper for you to strut around here? Yi, a black-grade high-level alchemist. Bao Shinran's eyes swept over him, and he could not help but pick at his ear. It can't be that you're an imposter, right? You don't seem that much older than me, so how could you be a black-grade high-level alchemist? He naturally knew what the 3 silver plaques hanging on Cheng Fei Jun's chest meant. Cheng Fei Jun's face instantly darkened. Was everyone not taking him to heart anymore now? He humphed and declared, I am Cheng Fei Jun, get out of this town immediately. Otherwise, the Star Defense Force will chase you out. When they heard these words, everyone felt vexed. His head was already being stepped on by another, yet the only thing he could do was make the other leave. How hateful. Is that right? Bao Shinran smiled calmly, and casually withdrew a tiny flag which he stuck into the ground. Shio, the flag suddenly grew as wind blew against it, becoming a huge flag that was 10 meters tall. There was a river drawn on the flag, and pure white snow surrounded it on all sides. One glance was enough to make one feel cold all over, as if he had entered into a world of ice and snow. No, no, no. This was not merely a feeling, but was quite real. They could clearly feel that the temperature of their surroundings had dropped considerably, and was still continuing to decrease. The Cold Water Sect's flag. Cheng Fei Jun exclaimed in shock, and his expression turned extremely ugly. Bao Shinran laughed and said, That's right, my sect is planning to use this land for something, and I hope that Grandmaster Cheng will give us some face. Otherwise, please do not blame my sect for not giving you face. Cheng Fei Jun's chest rose and fell sharply, hinting at the internal struggle he was experiencing. In the end, however, he fell down to sit on the ground. He had organized this martial arts tea party in his own name, and thus it had nothing to do with the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. As a result, he had no way to bring out the name of the Alchemists Association. The name of a black-grade high-level alchemist was indeed very awesome, and not even the bigger sects would dare to harm him, but this did not mean that the former definitely had to give him some face. Bao Shinran could completely set him to one side and ignore him, and how could it be that he would dare to run to the Cold Water Sect and voice his objections? When they saw even Cheng Fei Jun had cowered, everyone felt a sense of hopelessness. Could it be that they, a few thousand people, were going to be robbed by one person? Even if this robber was in the spiritual ocean tier, they'd have to flee. Anyways, this guy was only one person. If everyone fled at the same time, how could he be able to stop them all? There is no way you can flee. Bao Shinran smiled. This is the flag of my sect, and once it is open, the area within 1 mile of it will all be sealed. Without my approval, no one would be able to flee. Now, hand over the stuff obediently, he commanded coldly. He was here under the command of his master to stop the people here from entering the North region and participating in the entrance test for the Winter Moon Sect, as the Cold Water Sect and the Winter Moon Sect were not on good terms. If he was able to weaken the other sect, or even deliberately embarrass them a bit, it would be good. However, when he arrived, he actually discovered that a large amount of 100-year-old ginseng and ganoderma had appeared, which instantly made him very happy. He was really going to make a lot of money this time round. Grandmaster Ling, we can only depend on you now. Qi Yongyi and the others came over and gathered around Ling Han. Grandmaster Ling, just beat this guy to death. That's right, that guy is really too despicable. There was an Earth-grade alchemist here, and even if it was the sect master of the Cold Water Sect who had personally arrived, he would still have to give some face to Ling Han. Just like how the spiritual pedestal tier warriors were still mortals, whereas the flower-blossoming tier was equivalent to becoming immortal, once an alchemist ascended to Earth grade, his status would also spike sharply and was not something that a black-grade high-level alchemist would be able to compare to. Moreover, Ling Han's battle prowess was publicly acknowledged. He had consecutively defeated Feng Yang and Yang Tianzhao, so he was practically a monster. Ling Han could not help but smile and asked, "Didn't you guys want me not to make a move?" They were all embarrassed now. They had previously hoped that Ling Han would not make a move merely because they had wanted to take the first place in this martial arts tea party. But now that an outsider had arrived and was sweeping them all over with his superior ability of the spiritual ocean tier, they could only choose to ask Ling Han to suppress him. Liu Yutong and Li Sai-chan were also urging him as well. If Ling Han stepped out at this moment and defeated Bao Xinran with an invincible stance, that would be equivalent to confirming his status as the strongest among the younger generation of the 9 nations of the desolate north. They naturally hoped that the man they loved could win such a good name for himself. Ling Han smiled and stood up. There was nothing else that could be done. Bao Xinran wanted to rob them, or this was in a direct conflict with Ling Han's own interests. Someone wanted to rob his stuff. There was nothing else that needed to be said, he just simply had to kill the robber. Ling Han's killing intent circulated. This was not the Rain country that had Rain Emperor there to curb his actions. Moreover, he had now become an Earth-grade alchemist, and in terms of status, he was above the Rain Emperor, so if he wanted to kill someone, who was capable of stopping him? "You want to rob my stuff?" Ling Han asked as he walked so that he was standing in front of Bao Xinran. Hu Niu, meanwhile, was holding on to one corner of Ling Han's shirt and standing on one side. She could not help but bare her teeth. Someone actually wanted rob Ling Han's stuff? Ling Han was Niu's, so Ling Han's stuff was naturally Niu's too, then what you were robbing was Niu's stuff. Hu Niu was very angry. A piece of trash in the first layer of the gushing spring tier? Bao Xinran snorted. Since when could even a piece of trash in the first layer of the gushing spring tier dare to stand in front of me and speak? Kneel. He issued a light shout and the sound wave solidified, sweeping towards Ling Han. He had not cultivated any martial arts technique that was specifically focused on sound attacks, but with his cultivation of the spiritual ocean tier, this shout was like a lion's roar and was completely capable of tearing apart the skin, flesh, blood, and bones of someone in the gushing spring tier. Xiao, Ling Han had not even moved when Hu Niu did. Her tiny body was like a beam of light that instantly appeared above Bao Xinran's head. Pa, 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 pa. The little girl slapped Bao Xinran's face repeatedly. Pu. When they saw this, everyone choked. A 5 or 6-year-old little girl was madly oppressing Bao Xinran. Was this a dream? Only the martial artists from the Rain country looked proud. Previously, even someone as strong as Yang Tianzhao was heavily suppressed by Hu Niu, so much that he could only win by using a powerful move. In the end, he was almost scattered and smashed with one slash by Ling Han, though. This adult and child were definitely monsters among monsters. What more when Ling Han had even become an Earth-grade alchemist by now, which made them only capable of sweating in the face of his ability. He was practically a monster without any limits. Ah! Bao Xinran was stunned by the attack, but immediately came back to himself. He was mighty and overbearing for half the day, but now he was actually slapped in front of everyone's eyes. How humiliating was that? He quickly waved his fist in a strike at Hu Niu. However, Hu Niu was too fast. With a xiao, she had appeared behind him and launched another series of attacks. Instantly, Bao Xinran's back burst open and blood flew in all directions. Damn it! Damn it! After a few failed attempts at trying to catch Hu Niu, Bao Xinran knew that she was far faster than him. He hurriedly leaped to stand next to the flag. Taking hold of it, he shouted loudly, "Cold water is invincible, freezing 1,000 miles. Hong, a white-colored cold air gushed out from the flag, instantly freezing the area within 100 feet of it, everything becoming ice cubes. Ling Han and Hu Niu were not exempted either, and both of them were frozen solid. Chapter 303, Two Monsters. Chapter 303, Two Monsters. What a grand move. It had instantly stopped 2 people in their steps. Everyone had initially been exclaiming their praises, but when they saw this, they could not help but feel their hope was lost. Bao Xinran was already powerful enough by himself, but now that he actually possessed an even more powerful spirit tool, who would be able to stand against him? This flag was obviously a spirit tool. Once the martial intent contained in it was awakened, it would exude a cold air that was capable of freezing its surroundings solid, so who was capable of even getting near to it? According to the rumors, the most priceless treasure of the cold water sect was called the cold water flag. Once this flag was unfurled, it would really freeze everything within 1,000 miles of it, so it was extremely frightening. This flag was merely an imitation of it, so its power was in no way comparable to the real cold water flag. However, how could it not be enough to suppress two gushing spring tier martial artists? Bao Xinran spat onto the ground. A little girl actually made him activate the flag to subdue her. It was really a bit embarrassing. Meanwhile, Cheng Fei Jun smirked coldly. He had originally depended on Luo Jifeng to kill Ling Han, but the former had not managed to succeed even after so many days. Secretly, he had called him scornfully as a piece of trash. But now, Bao Xinran was actually going to help fulfill his heart's desire. This made him almost want to rush up and embrace Bao Xinran and give him a kiss of thanks. What a wonderful man. Ka. It was at this moment that a sudden change occurred. There was a large area on the ice enveloping Ling Han that was suddenly covered with spiderweb-like cracks. It was visible that there was a crimson flame circulating all over his body, and this flame had already melted a hole into the ice. The strange fire. Cheng Fei Jun's eyes instantly reddened. He had had a strange fire before, so even though he was located very far away from it, he could sense a sliver of familiarity about that strange fire. However, it was also completely different as well. His own strange fire had been completely swallowed by Ling Han's strange fire. It was obvious that this strange fire was even more powerful. As it had been fused from two strange fires, this was natural. I want it. I want it. I want it. Cheng Fei Jun called out internally. It was able to melt even the ice produced by the flag, so the might of the strange fire had to be exceptionally powerful. And yet, the Ka sounds had not originated from the ice block enveloping Ling Han, but from Hunyo's side. They could only watch as the little girl opened her mouth and continued to chew. She endlessly bit through the ice, swallowing and chewing very quickly. In only a few moments, her little head had appeared, and was currently in the process of freeing the other parts of her body quickly. Fuck, what kind of glutton was she that she could even devour this kind of ice? Bao Xinran's face twitched. These were two fuck *** monsters, especially Hunyo. What kind of teeth did she have? Immediately, his killing intent rose. He fixed his stare on Hunyo. As of this moment, she had not freed herself, so he was completely able to kill her easily. Chong, the twin swords at his waist left their sheaths, and flickered with a cold light like water. Hey, have you forgotten me? Ling Han smiled calmly. You're just a piece of trash in the first layer of the gushing spring tier. I'll kill you first, then kill this little girl. Bao Xinran flew forwards, and charged towards Ling Han. He raised his two swords in a slash, and Hong, martial intent circulated as ice and snow flew all around. This was no illusion, but real ice and snow. Once one managed to break through to the spiritual ocean tier, they could release their martial intent out of their bodies and affect the world, forming a solid attack. Every bit of ice and snow shone with a tiny pattern and possessed a terrifying destructive power. Bao Xinran had previously underestimated Ling Han. Since he was able to easily free himself from the ice produced by the flag, Ling Han was worthy to die by his hand. Ling Han drew his sword and the Four Seasons sword technique circulated. The images of spring, summer, autumn, and winter circulated, forming a natural cycle. Bao Xinran's attack had martial intent as its basis, so it was obviously stronger, but Ling Han's power was not too much weaker, either. Added together with the fact that the Four Seasons sword technique was a black-grade high-level martial arts technique and possessed formidable power, this was adequate to compensate for his lack of martial intent. Hong, hong, hong. The two of them continuously exchanged blows, and it actually seemed difficult to decide the victor in this short amount of time. Quickly, pinch me. Am I dreaming? How is it possible that I'm seeing a guy in the first layer of the gushing spring tier exchange blows with a spiritual ocean tier elite? Someone mumbled. My eyes must have blurred. Haha, how could this be possible? Fuck, I'm going to go crazy. Is this really the gushing spring tier? When they saw this scene, aside from the martial artists from the Rain Country, all the others looked like they had gone mad, grabbing their heads and screaming. This was really surreal, wasn't it? A mere martial artist at the first layer of the gushing spring tier was actually able to face a spiritual ocean tier elite head-on and not be at the disadvantage. This was practically a fantasy. Though Hunyo was also in the gushing spring tier, but at least she had not faced Bao Xinran head-on and emerged victorious because of her superior speed. This, at least, was still acceptable to them. But in Ling Han's case, he definitely had the aura of the first layer of the gushing spring tier, yet was able to face an opponent in the fifth layer of the spiritual ocean tier head-on and exchange blows with him. This was practically enough to blind their dog eyes. The gushing spring tier could actually be this powerful. Not just Ling Han, but also Hunyo. Neither was at a disadvantage when they faced Bao Xinran, and showed perfectly what a monster was, and what a freak was. You guys don't know yet, right? His Ling Han, someone from the Rain country declared. What? His Grandmaster Ling, Earth-grade alchemist. That's right. How could that be? He looks to be only about 16 or 17 years old. Aya, I'm really going to go crazy. A young man 16 or 17 years old is not only capable of facing a spiritual ocean tier opponent head-on, but is also an Earth-grade alchemist. I have always been praised as a genius, but why is it that when I compare myself to him, I feel like an idiot? I'm an idiot too. Idiot here as well. Everyone sighed. At first, they had all felt they were quite capable, always feeling that no matter what, they could still be considered quite powerful amongst the younger generation, but they had only found out now that they were merely ignorant and thought too highly of themselves. On the other side, Hunyo had naturally bit her way out of the ice trapping her. However, when she saw Ling Han was currently embroiled in a furious battle with Bao Xinran, she had decided not to rush in and join the battle. She had a very strong sensitivity about battles and knew that Ling Han had not displayed his full battle prowess yet, so he was definitely able to win. As a result, she had naturally chosen not to interfere. Bao Xinran was shocked. He was genuinely in the fifth layer of the spiritual ocean tier and his opponent was clearly only in the first layer of the gushing spring tier, yet the latter possessed battle prowess that was not the slightest bit weaker than his. How could he accept this reality? What if his opponent also broke through to the spiritual ocean tier? Wouldn't that mean he would be instantly wiped out in a single move? No, he definitely could not allow such a genius to continue living. He leaped up, intending to once again activate the flag to freeze Ling Han solid and thus kill him easily. You're planning on using the same trick twice? Ling Han smirked coldly. He had accumulated enough power for Mysterious 3000 and was ready to strike at any moment. This powerful move merely needed the time equivalent for 3 breaths to prepare, and so was very quickly ready. Bao Xinran's hand had already touched the flag. He wanted to pull out the flag and use it as a weapon to sweep at Ling Han. If Ling Han was actually struck in this way, he would first be frozen solid, then shattered by the powerful force of the attack. That naturally meant a thorough death. Hong, 4 flashes of light from the sword shone at the same time. 1 flash was the real sword, whereas the other 3 were sword chi. Then, they evolved into a total of 400 sword flashes that blasted towards Bao Xinran. A powerful shock and extreme fear shone from Bao Xinran's eyes, and he hurriedly pulled out the flag to parry this attack. Pu, 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 pu. As the sword flashes washed over without restraint, it produced a world-shaking effect. Bao Xinran stumbled back in retreat. His whole body was covered with wounds and a large number of them were bone-deep, exposing the scary white of his bones. He had completely lost every bit of his previous demeanor. However, since he was able to parry the Mysterious 3000 and not die, he could be considered quite capable. The battle flag had blocked a large portion of the attack. Otherwise, he would still be dead. Chapter 304, Becoming an Idol. Chapter 304, Becoming an Idol. Everyone was astonished, and those like Lian Xiuzhu, Bai Yu Quan, and the others were filled with embarrassment. How could they not be? They all thought of themselves as geniuses of their generation that could only be rivaled by a rare few in their age range, all filled with an absolute confidence, thinking that if they really put all their effort into the battle, they were definitely capable of obtaining the final victory. But Bao Xinran's appearance had naturally dealt a heavy blow to their self-confidence. They were both in their mid-20s, but Bao Xinran was already in the middle stage of the spiritual ocean tier, and the gap between them and him was extraordinarily big. But that was fine, because Bao Xinran came from the cold water sect, which was a great party, so it was reasonable that they could not compare to him. However, Ling Han actually managed to exchange successive blows with Bao Xinran, and that was already enough to give them a jaw-dropping shock, yet he now succeeded in heavily injuring Bao Xinran with a single slash. This made them have no choice but to admit the fact that they had been extremely ignorant in the past. If they actually found out this one strike was not Ling Han's full power, as he had only launched 400 sword flashes, their facial expressions would probably be even uglier. What was even more horrifying was the fact that Ling Han was also an Earth-grade alchemist. Would anyone actually dare to believe this? Ling Han smiled calmly. He had not put his full effort into this strike because he had not wanted to become completely weakened after he had launched this attack. That feeling was really much too unpleasant. Moreover, Bao Xinran was not that powerful, so there was no need to use 800 sword flashes to deal with him. Though Bao Xinran was still standing upright, he was continuously coughing up blood. His whole body was shaking and a large part of the flesh and blood on his limbs had been torn off by the blow, so it was enough of a feat for him to even remain standing. He held tightly onto the flag, as he was only able to remain standing with the support of the flag. "You, who exactly are you?" he asked defiantly. How was it that someone in the first layer of the gushing spring tier was so strong? For someone who is about to lose their life, what is the point of knowing so much? Ling Han said coldly. "You dare kill me?" Bao Xinran laughed coldly. "I am a disciple of the cold water sect. If you dare to kill me, the powerful elites of my sect will definitely raze the country you are from to the ground. The pride of a great sect cannot be violated. I'm afraid you are going to be disappointed, because I am also an Earth-grade alchemist. Do you think that the members of the cold water sect will offend me, an Earth-grade alchemist, for the sake of a mere disciple like you?" Ling Han asked calmly. Previously, though they had all been talking about it, Bao Xinran had been engaged in a furious battle with Ling Han, so how could he have heard when he had his full concentration on the fight? His first reaction upon hearing this now was that Ling Han had to be joking. How could it be possible that there would be such a young Earth-grade alchemist in this world? "That's impossible," he said immediately. "You need not bother about that anymore. Obediently lay beneath the ground. In your next life, you should not be so overbearing, particularly when you're in front of me." Ling Han's sword pierced out. He had no plans to leave Bao Xinran alive to make trouble for him later on. Damn it. Though Bao Xinran was injured, his internal and vital organs were not injured. He put all his effort into activating the flag and swept it towards Ling Han. Hoo! The flag waved and swept out a freezing cold wind capable of freezing someone to death. Hong, the strange fire circulated by Ling Han's side and provided a layer of fire to shield him, dispersing the cold air that was sweeping towards him. Thus, the greatest effect of this flag was rendered useless. Ling Han struck repeatedly. His battle prowess was higher than Bao Xinran's, and the latter was unable to stand against Ling Han even after using the flag, so how could he block his subsequent attacks? Within a few moves, his throat was slashed by Ling Han's sword. As blood spurted out from his wound, he fell onto the ground loudly. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Not too long ago, he was as disdainful as a god looking upon mortals, and killed them as if they were mere grass. But just how long ago had that time been that he would suffer a similar fate now? Ironic, it was really too ironic. He opened his eyes wide in defiance, trying his best to retain this piece of the sky in his sight, but the only scene left for him was darkness. "My master will definitely avenge me." He left behind these last words, and filled with a longing for life, breathed his last. Ling Han. Grandmaster Ling. Grandmaster Ling is mighty. Long live Grandmaster Ling. The whole plaza was completely lit on fire. Young people would not have so many worries or thoughts. They only knew that an outsider had come and suppressed them so much that no one dared raise their heads, and it was Ling Han who had stepped out and defeated this outsider. This outsider slaughtered them without any bit of hesitation, and in the end, was killed by Ling Han without mercy. As the saying goes, a tooth for a tooth and blood for blood. They were overjoyed. In comparison, what could Cheng Fei Jun count as? As a black-grade high-level alchemist, he did not even manage to suppress a martial artist of the spiritual ocean tier. That was practically a joke. This was a bit unjust to Cheng Fei Jun. Because the great sects usually had their own in-house alchemists, they were basically able to satisfy the needs for alchemical pills of their own disciples and would only make requests to the Alchemists Association for certain special pills. However, in ordinary cases, they would be able to solve the problem by simply making a trip to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and taking part in an auction there. Thus, the great sects were merely wary of the combined force of the Alchemists Association, but because they did not have a direct need of external alchemist services, they did not attach too much importance to alchemists. For examples, Feng Yang could declare his intention to cripple Ling Han's legs without care. As long as he did not kill Ling Han, the Alchemists Association would not come forward in Ling Han's defense. After all, the great sects would be wary of the Alchemists Association, but the Alchemists Association would not easily turn hostile against the great sects, either. Naturally, the status of an Earth-grade alchemist was much higher. Any sect would gladly treat one as honored guest, and if they actually managed to invite one such alchemist to stay with them as a respected elder, that would mean a great boost to the sect's own ability. Cheng Fei Jun's face was completely ashen. He was the one who had organized this martial arts tea party, and had even disregarded his hard-earned capital and took out a restore heart pill, but now, great. Ling Han had instead become the brightest star now, so much that even he, the organizer, was actually set to one side and ignored. This damn guy, why was he not dead yet? No, he had to make another visit to Luo Jifeng again tonight and convince him to act no matter what. Ling Han was all smiles as he said, "Everyone, please don't forget to come to Pleasure Come In. There is still a large supply of 100-year-old ginseng and ganoderma. As long as you possess enough origin crystals, there'll be enough for everyone." Ha 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 ha. Everyone laughed loudly. At first, Earth-grade alchemists were high, noble people, as they were big bosses that were even higher in status than the ruler of a nation. Yet someone like that would actually come down to their level and peddle goods. This had really shortened the distance between such an esteemed person and common people like themselves. We'll definitely come to help out with Grandmaster Ling's business. If we're really being honest, we're the ones making a huge profit since we can actually purchase 100-year-old ginsengs and ganoderma. Thank you, Grandmaster Ling. Everyone expressed their thanks sincerely. After all, as long as a spiritual ocean tier warrior was willing to actually refine them, they could produce origin crystals at any time, but how could 100-year-old ginseng and ganoderma be so easily obtained? Even if their clans were willing to set up a spirit field to cultivate these plants, they would take a long time to be ready for harvest and would only benefit their descendants. Moreover, this kind of spirit herbs had extremely strict requirements of their environment. To reach the 100-year age, who knew how much effort and sacrifice had to go into cultivation? It was not merely the passing of 100 years' time. Thus, even for the colossal entities like the imperial families, even if they had their own herb gardens, it was already shocking enough to have 30 or 50-year-old spirit herbs such as ginseng. Where would they be able to obtain 100-year-old ginseng? This move of Ling had not only helped him earn a large amount of origin crystals, but also win the appreciation and gratitude of the younger generation of the 9 nations. This was truly the case of idly poking a stick into the ground and ending up with a tree that grew just to provide shade for you. An unintentional action brought to Ling Han an unexpected success, which was enough to make Cheng Fei Jun die of envy. Chapter 305, The Next Step. Chapter 305, The Next Step. Cheng Fei Jun had organized this martial arts tea party firstly to select some outstanding geniuses Luo Jifeng would recruit them. Secondly, he wanted to establish his individual reputation and name. When he stepped out later to personally convince them, his identity as a black-grade high-level alchemist would naturally make it easier to convince them to join. However, Cheng Fei Jun had now been completely left behind and forgotten in a corner, whereas Ling Han gained everyone's approval and gratitude. This really made Cheng Fei Jun fume in fury. Who asked him to retreat at the most crucial moment? In the world of martial arts, even if your ability was weak, if you actually battled with all your effort and died, others would still give you a thumbs up and proclaim you as a real man. However, if one were to flee without even daring to put up a fight or cower from the battle in public, that was an act that would engender disdain the most. Ling Han clasped his fists together and returned with Liu Yutong and the others back to the inn. On the way there, Liu Yutong and Li Sai-chan were still recalcitrant, saying that since Ling Han had obtained the first place, he should have asked Cheng Fei-jun for that restore heart pill. This made Ling Han laugh loudly, as well as made him feel disdainful. Just think, the one and only alchemy emperor, how could it be that he would still need to take the low-quality, trash pill concocted by a black-grade high-level alchemist? That was really too much of a joke. Not long after they had returned to the inn, customers surged forth like clouds. Zhu Wuju was already very busy, and Guang Yuan and Ken Yu went to help him as well. Later, not just the younger generation of the 9 nations of the desolate north came forth with their original crystals, but even quite a number of alchemists from the Star Brilliance Palace Hall came when they heard the news. Anyone who had yet to break through to the flower-blossoming tier was mortal, and a mortal's lifespan was merely as long as 100 years, so who would not want to live for a few years longer? The more power these elders possessed, the more they treasured their lives, were willing to make any sacrifice as long as they could live for a few years longer. The effects of 100-year ginseng and ganoderma were not to the point they could defy logic, but no matter what, they would help extend one's lifespan a bit, so it would be definitely no issue for one to live another 3 or 5 years. Moreover, these items were extremely nutritious and could help heal hidden injuries, which was equivalent to extend one's lifespan. Liu Yutong and Li Sai-chan had taken the position of housewives and stood at one side, cheerfully counting the origin crystals, which gained Hunyou's disdain. She secretly thought, these 2 silly girls, what was so nice about looking at origin crystals? The right thing to do was to stick to Ling Han instead. After a day of business, Ling Han had gathered a terrifying amount of 100,000 origin crystals. This was a wealth that would make anyone envious. It was guaranteed that even the imperial family of the Rain Country would only be able to produce a mere scrap of this amount at most. The auction was also going to take place soon. In another 2 days, it would begin. And on the other side, with the help and urging from 3 Earth-grade alchemists, Ling Han's verification as an Earth-grade alchemist would also be completed soon. At most, in another 5 days, the proof of his identity would be delivered. Ling Han was very satisfied and began to consider where he would go next. The Star Brilliance Palace Hall was only a stopover point for him on his way out of the desolate north, so he naturally would not be staying for too long here. But since he was here, he decided to simply verify his status as an Earth-grade alchemist, which would ensure that he would be able to do as he liked. Now that these 2 issues were almost solved, his next stop would naturally have to be moved up the schedule. The Winter Moon sect was planning to open their doors to recruit disciples. After Ling Han heard this news from others, he considered for a moment, then decided to head to the Winter Moon sect. Firstly, he had to investigate his mother's whereabouts. Secondly, he wanted to collect some interest there. For such a great sect like the Winter Moon sect, they definitely had their own herb farm, and Ling Han planned to empty this farm to enrich the space inside the Black Tower. Who asked this sect to capture his mom and injure his dad? If he didn't avenge himself, could he even be considered human? When he had enough ability, he would naturally kill Ao Feng and end this enmity completely. They'd go to the Winter Moon sect. However, he would have to hide his identity. Otherwise, based on the fact that he and Feng Yang were deadly enemies, even if that elite of the spiritual infant tier did not kill him because he was an Earth-grade alchemist, he would still chase Ling Han out. By then, how was he to take over the Winter Moon sect's herb farm? Because they had spent all their origin crystals and the martial arts tea party was already over, quite a number of young men and women did not wait for the auction to begin, but instead chose to set out directly and head towards the Winter Moon sect. However, out of those who set out, some traveled a certain distance ahead but then actually came back. They had deliberately returned to see Ling Han and told him a piece of news. On their way, they had seen a few young people coming over from the northern region. Could they be just like Bao Xinran? Ling Han thanked them, and these people once again set out on their journey. Ling Han could not help but feel rueful. He had only killed Bao Xinran because of a conflict of interests brought about by the latter, and had not considered much else. However, he had actually gained the hearts of so many as a result. Otherwise, they had already left, so why would they deliberately come back and tell him the news? But based on the fact that they managed to leave freely, he knew that the newcomers should be different from Bao Xin Ran. Otherwise, these people would have robbed and killed them rather than let them leave. Could it be that they were here to participate in the auction? This was quite possible. After all, there was at least one blue-scale demonic fruit on auction, so it was natural that those nearby would be attracted to come. At midnight, that feeling of being observed came back again. Ling Han knew that it was definitely Luo Jifeng. It was not the first time that old guy had done this kind of thing, but with Ling Han's eye of truth, he had absolutely nowhere he could hide. However, Ling Han soon looked solemn, because Luo Jifeng actually wore a veil to conceal his face today. Since he was trying to hide himself, he was obviously planning to do something bad. Obviously, Ling Han had not given him the chance to act previously, which finally made that old guy lose patience. He had decided to make a move even if Ling Han was at the inn. Ling Han hesitated. Should he immediately retreat into the Black Tower? If he retreated into the Black Tower, then he would definitely be safe, but he still had one chance for the Black Tower to instill power into him. And he was currently in the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, so as soon as he strengthened his foundations so firmly that they could not be shaken, he would attempt to break through to the Spiritual Ocean tier. If he still did not use this chance, that would mean a complete waste of it. Most importantly, the Black Tower instilling power into him was a process of strengthening and refining his body, which was extremely beneficial to him. Thus, he definitely could not miss this opportunity. Small Tower had also said that the later the chance for instilling power was used, the better it would be. He was now in the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. There was no later than this. With the installation of power, he would be able to possess the cultivation of the 9th layer of the Spiritual Ocean tier, and with his monstrous battle prowess, the 9th layer of the Spiritual Ocean tier would be enough for him to battle an opponent of the Spiritual Pedestal tier. Although the higher one's cultivation, the more difficult it would be to battle an opponent at a stronger cultivation level, but there should be no problems against an opponent in the 2nd or 3rd layer of the Spiritual Pedestal tier. After all, Luo Jifeng was only in the 3rd layer of the Spiritual Pedestal tier. If he fully used the mysterious 3000, he should be able to have the chance to kill him in a single strike. After he made his decision, Ling Han immediately moved quietly. He left the inn and headed towards a dark location at a far-off area. With Luo Jifeng's senses and divine sense of someone in the Spiritual Pedestal tier, he naturally discovered instantly Ling Han's departure. The old man could not help but be slightly stunned. How could there be such a coincidence? He had just planned to kill Ling Han even if it meant revealing his identity when this brat actually left the inn alone, and created an opportunity for him. Odd. However, there was no way he could resist such temptation. In his mind, there was no way someone at merely the 1st layer of the Gushing Spring tier could become a threat to him. The old man leaped forth and flew after Ling Han, closely tailing him. He planned to catch up to him in a remoter location and kill him. Firstly, this would solve a problem for Cheng Fei Jun, and secondly, he still had to draw out the strange fire. Otherwise, there was no possibility that Cheng Fei Jun would be able to take over the position of leader in the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. After only over 10+ minutes did Ling Han suddenly stop. It was precisely at the plaza that had hosted the martial arts tea party the day before. There was still a large number of sun's hides that had yet to be dismantled here, and it was dark all around, as if it was a ghost town. This was indeed a good place to commit murder. It was very spacious. Chapter 306, Battling the Spiritual Pedestal Tier. Chapter 306, Battling the Spiritual Pedestal Tier. Old man, come on out. You've followed me for so long, you should come out to take a breath of fresh air, Ling Han said, turning around. Luo Jifeng continued to hide himself and did not step out at the first instance. He thought that Ling Han was trying to bluff. How could a brat in the 1st layer of the Gushing Spring tier possibly discover his tracks? So you can be shameless as long as there's a cloth covering your face. Ling Han snorted. Luo Jifeng was instantly furious, and at the same time, he realized that Ling Han had discovered him. He strode out and asked, "Brat, how did you discover me?" "I guessed," Ling Han said simply. "I vaguely felt that there was a bum beetle behind me, and thinking it over, Someone who would be following behind another in the middle of the night like this must be a shameful old wretch. Luo Jifeng fumed angrily because of his invectives and shouted in fury, "How dare you?" "Hehe, I am usually very daring," Ling Han smiled. Luo Jifeng instantly calmed down. An elite of the spiritual pedestal tier naturally could not lose composure like this. He crossed his arms behind his back and asked, "Brat, you probably don't know my cultivation level yet, right?" The spiritual pedestal tier. He did not wait for Ling Han to make a guess and simply revealed the answer. "I heard that you dared to kill even a man in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. This has probably made you smug and conceited, and so you think that I'm also the same, right? You're wrong, wrong. Whether it is the spiritual pedestal or the spiritual ocean tier, there's no way you can tell the difference between cultivation levels, and this is precisely going to be the reason for your death. There are some people you can't offend, and once you do, your only fate would be death." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "So it is an old wretch in the spiritual pedestal tier. Sorry I didn't recognize you. I am indeed quite curious. Cheng Fei Jun is actually able to command an old wretch like you, so from the look of things, you don't have much to be proud of." "Nonsense. Cheng Fei Jun is the one who has to obey my command." Luo Jifeng immediately rebuked, but once the words left his mouth, he could not help but tense up and say sharply, "Damn you, you actually dared to trick me with word." Ling Han shrugged and said, "You're here to kill me anyways. Moreover, a battle between the spiritual pedestal tier and the gushing spring tier would definitely be a one-sided domination. I am someone who is definitely going to die, so what if I know some secrets? Old wretch, let me ask you, which party are you really from?" Luo Jifeng was dazed from listening to Ling Han's words. The first words that Ling Han had said were obviously supposed to be his lines, yet why had they come from Ling Han's mouth? Though this was a fact, it still made him feel extremely uncomfortable. A man who was well aware that he was going to die could still remain so calm? Yet when he heard Ling Han's last few words, the old man was once again enraged. This brat still dared to call him an old wretch. "What is the point for a dead man to know so much?" he asked coldly. Being called old wretch repeatedly by Ling Han made him feel like he couldn't bear to immediately kill Ling Han. He wanted to toy with the latter for a while before killing him slowly. Ling Han laughed and said, "A wretch will be a wretch. Never listening to nice words, only brute strength works. Damn you." Luo Jifeng humphed in anger. He really could not bear being repeatedly insulted as old wretch by Ling Han, so he planned to first subdue this brat, then slowly torture him. At the same time, recovering the strange fire was quite a troublesome task. Cheng Fei Jun had to be at the scene as well, so he had better first subdue Ling Han. "Small tower," Ling Han said lightly. Suddenly, a terrifying power gushed out of his dantian and instantly circulated through his entire body. First layer of the spiritual ocean tier, second layer, third layer. His cultivation level spiked up sharply, and in a short while, reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Yi. Luo Jifeng was just about to make a move when he suddenly ceased all movement and said in an utterly astonished tone, "Impossible. Impossible. How can your aura instantly soar up to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier? From the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, that was practically a breach through 2 major tiers. It was shocking to the point of being horrifying. Who could accept this? What is the point for a dead man to know so much?" Ling Han asked. This was exactly what Luo Jifeng had said to him in reply before. Luo Jifeng had already regained his senses from his absolute astonishment earlier. He said, "So what if you are in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier? There is still a gap of a major tier, and to suppress you would be a complete piece of cake for me. I definitely do not believe that in this tiny place like the desolate north, there could be a 17-year-old in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier who at the same time is also an earth-grade alchemist. You must have taken some kind of alchemical pill which has temporarily raised your cultivation level. You would only possess the strength through this kind of upgrade. It is impossible for your martial arts comprehension to have increased as well. You would at most be able to only express the battle prowess of the 3rd or 4th layer. In front of me, such battle prowess is practically trash," he said disdainfully. Ling Han's right hand moved and a sword appeared out of thin air. This was no ordinary iron sword, but the demon birth sword. Today, he was definitely not going to spare Luo Jifeng. This, what kind of spirit tool is this? Luo Jifeng's expression went through a dramatic change. Even if the martial intent in the demon birth sword had not been restored, a level 10 spirit tool was still a level 10 spirit tool, after all. Merely one look at the patterns engraved on the body of the sword would arouse a powerful feeling of hopelessness, as if one was facing an ultimate elite standing at the apex of strength. Level 10 spirit tool, demon birth sword, Ling Han said calmly. He did not hide anything this time round. Level 10 spirit tool. Level 10 spirit tool. Luo Jifeng mumbled, powerful greed instantly appearing on his face. I understand, the basis for your confidence is this demon birth sword. Ha 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 ha, a level 10 spirit tool is indeed powerful, but you have no way to activate the martial intent within it, so at most, it would only be a threat to me due to how sharp it is. I have to thank you for gifting me with such an ultimate treasure. Ha ha ha, only I deserve to have this spirit tool. Is that so? Ling Han extended his left hand, and with a mental command, Wang, 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 veins appeared on his hand, shining with a colorful light. Pu. Luo Jifeng instantly choked. This was martial intent, the genuine thing. How could this be? How could this be? He was instantly driven mad. If one used an alchemical pill to forcibly upgrade one's own cultivation level, that would only mean a strength upgrade. It was not possible for martial arts cultivation to be upgraded as well. Could it be that Ling Han was really in the spiritual ocean tier, yet he had only forcibly suppressed his cultivation level previously? Yet, a 17-year-old spiritual ocean tier martial artist who was also an earth-grade alchemist. No matter how he looked at it, it was nonsense. How could there be such a monster in this world? No matter how he dared to contemplate, he could never imagine that Ling Han's soul used to belong to an ultimate elite of the heaven tier who was the alchemy emperor. Thus, not just earth-grade alchemist, he could even immediately transform into a heaven-grade alchemist. And as long as there was enough power, with his divine sense of the heaven tier, how could it be that he could not form martial arts intent? Ling Han lightly shook the demon birth sword. Wang, the precious sword shone, and two patterns gave off a faint light. This meant that he had managed to revive a portion of the martial intent in the demon birth sword. Even if it was only a little bit, how awesome was a level 10 spirit tool? A terrifying might washed over him, instantly causing Luo Jifeng's heart to tremble like crazy. His legs weakened so much that he had almost fallen to his knees on the ground. Previously, merely the decree of a spiritual infant tier elite was enough to make Fu Yuansheng and the other two spiritual pedestal tier elites only capable of resistance but unable to make a move. A level 10 spirit tool was naturally even more awesome. Unfortunately, Ling Han was only able to activate two patterns after all. Moreover, they were only faintly shining, so the martial intent released from them was too limited. As a result, Luo Jifeng still managed to keep a large part of his battle prowess. I shall accept such a precious sword as my own. Luo Jifeng was astonished, but at the same time, he was even more excited. Chapter 307, Kill Just the Same. Chapter 307, Kill Just the Same. Luo Jifeng was extremely astonished, because Ling Han was actually capable of reviving a level 10 spirit tool. Though it was only a little bit, it was already enough of a shock. However, he also thought that if even Ling Han was capable of reviving a level 10 spirit tool, then what about him? If this demon birth sword fell into his hands, it would definitely be able to express even more powerful might. This was a level 10 spirit tool. Ha 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 ha, I shall accept this kind of precious tool as my own. He laughed loudly and stretched out a large hand to grab Ling Han. A black cloud expanded and numerous skulls appeared within it. It was as if the door to hell had been opened and innumerable spirits of the dead had exited. Ling Han suddenly understood, and exclaimed, "So you are from the Thousand Corpse sect? No wonder your aura felt familiar." What? Luo Jifeng was flabbergasted. How could you possibly know of the existence of our sect? Nonsense, You've already used the secret arts of the Thousand Corpse sect right in front of my face. If I still can't recognize it, then what is the use of having this pair of eyes? Ling Han snorted. Luo Jifeng was extremely depressed. There had been no signs of the Thousand Corpse sect for tens of thousands years. Moreover, in the last 10,000 years, their martial arts suffered a tremendous blow, leading to a lapse in their inheritance. There shouldn't be anyone who would be able to recognize the secret arts of the Thousand Corpse sect in this era, yet how could this brat from out of nowhere recognize it with a single look? Brat, it seems that there are a lot of secrets you're hiding. Very quickly, his eyes shone with a strange light. A 17-year-old who was an Earth-grade alchemist and simultaneously in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, this could no longer be described as merely a miracle. He even later took out a level 10 spirit tool and even managed to recognize the secret arts of the Thousand Corpse sect with a single look. He definitely had to be hiding a colossal secret. His heart throbbed wildly. If he was able to capture Ling Han, who knows, it might be the greatest chance in his entire lifetime. Don't dream such wonderful fantasies. It's impossible. Ling Han shook his head. You know what I'm thinking? Nonsense. Just look at how you're practically salivating. How could it not be obvious what kind of devious ideas you're contemplating? Ling Han said with a derisive snort. Luo Jifeng naturally had not lost so much composure that he was salivating. He gave a humph. At this moment, the surroundings were completely covered by his black chi. One after another, skulls rolled over and over, making him feel very confident in himself. Brat, when I take you down, not only will I gain your fated opportunity, you will also be tortured incredibly at my hand. I can guarantee that you will be utterly miserable. Ling Han snorted and sneered, just a damn eunuch who has no D*** between his legs. No wonder you have a catamite. Since you're cultivating the evil arts of the Thousand Corpse sect, your body is like a mummy, so your D*** has naturally rotted and you can only sell your behind. You, Luo Jifeng felt as if his heart had been dealt a heavy blow. His face twisted and he suddenly gave an enraged roar, as if he was a ghost himself. Instantly, innumerable skulls appeared and pounced towards Ling Han. This was his greatest pain. As a man, he had lost his D***, and now that Ling Han had exposed this fact right in front of his face, this instantly drove him to extraordinary depths of fury. Damn wretch, I have yet to call you to account for this. You almost made me blind. Ling Han released a sharp whistle, and waved the demon birth sword, using the sword technique of Mysterious 3000. Hong, 700 sword flashes moved at the same time. With the driving force of the demon birth sword, every sword flash actually transformed into a black-armored knight formed from demonic chi that charged towards Luo Jifeng in attack. Fuck. Ling Han was instantly stunned. Each of these black-armored knights were at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. 700 of these black-armored knights moving at the same time, what kind of concept was that? Even he himself had never imagined that the Mysterious 3000 combined with the demon birth sword would actually create such a terrifying might. Of course, this was also because with the installation of power from the Black Tower, his power had soared to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. He had even deliberately kept 100 sword flashes in reserve in order to spare Luo Jifeng's life hair would not be able to interrogate him otherwise. But, who would have thought that the might of this strike was practically capable of defying logic? Hong, 700 black-armored knights rushed past. Not only was the corpse chi that was all around completely dispersed, all the skulls were completely shattered as well. Luo Jifeng had died without a whole body, leaving behind not even a single scrap. Luo Jifeng might not even be able to resist merely one black-armored knight of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, what more when 700 of such powerful beings assaulted him at the same time. Ari. Ling Han sighed. This was great, he had directly killed Luo Jifeng, so all the trails were broken. His thoughts took a turn. I'll go look for that scholar boy. He returned quickly. When he arrived at Luo Jifeng's courtyard, he grabbed the scholar boy in a single move. He knocked the latter unconscious and stored him in the Black Tower. Then, he too flashed into the Black Tower and began his interrogation. I was forced, I was forced. The scholar boy was scared half to death and filled with even more incomprehension and fear about the space inside the Black Tower. No matter how Ling Han asked, he said he didn't know anything. He had only been taken in by Luo Jifeng after the latter had come to the town. At first, he thought that he had met his benefactor, but the result was, he was also disgusted. As a result, he always used brute force, wanting to torture Luo Jifeng, yet that only made the old wretch even more pleased. Ling Han could only once again knock the scholar boy unconscious and toss him out of the Black Tower. This trail was not broken yet, because Cheng Fei Jun was still alive. He made the scholar boy ask Cheng Fei Jun over to Luo Jifeng's courtyard. In order to make the scholar boy obey his commands, he simply stuffed an alchemical pill into the latter's mouth and forced him to swallow it. Ling Han lied and said that it was poison, and if the scholar boy was not given the antidote in 3 days, he would die. The scholar boy was not the slightest bit doubtful. Because Luo Jifeng had not returned all this while, he felt that it was very possible that the former had already been killed by Ling Han. When he thought that even such a terrifying person like Luo Jifeng had been dealt with by Ling Han, how could he dare to resist? Not long after, a sound arose from the doors to the courtyard, and the sounds of 2 pairs of footsteps approached. How could it be you? When Cheng Fei Jun saw Ling Han, he could not help but look extremely astonished. No matter whom he saw, it would not be as unacceptable to him as seeing Ling Han here. Ling Han humphed and said, I am the elder in charge of discipline. Why do you not kneel upon seeing me? Cheng Fei Jun was dazed by his bluff. After hesitating for a moment, he instantly looked vicious and said, You're bluffing me. Where is Master Luo? Master Luo, he exclaimed in shock. How troublesome. Ling Han moved, and with a single palm strike, knocked him unconscious. Then, he turned his eyes towards the scholar boy. I'll do it myself, the scholar boy hurriedly said. He knocked himself into the wall, and with a tong, he fainted. He really did know how to conduct himself. Ling Han could not help but break into laughter and stored the 2 of them simultaneously into the Black Tower. He returned to the inn and once again entered into the Black Tower. Then, he began to interrogate Cheng Fei Jun. Ling Han, you are really daring. Even if you are an Earth-grade alchemist, but to imprison another alchemist privately, this is still a heavy crime. Cheng Fei Jun called out sternly once he awoke. When has even a dreg of the 1,000 Corpse sect become so arrogant? Ling Han shook his head. What nonsense are you spouting? Who's a dreg of the 1,000 Corpse sect? Cheng Fei Jun's expression changed drastically, yet he turned about and asked Ling Han, Speak less nonsense, and quickly let me go. Now that you've entered into my space, you still want to leave? Ling Han smiled calmly. His body rose up into midair, and with a casual wave of his hand, a large hill sprouted out of the ground, forming a change in their environment. Pu. Cheng Fei Jun instantly choked, his eyes fixed in a stare, as if he had become an idiot. This is an illusion, he mumbled to himself, his whole body trembling. Pa. Ling Han delivered a sharp slap, and the pain immediately made Cheng Fei Jun cry out in pain. This was definitely no illusion. Chapter 308, The 1,000 Corpse Sect's Plans. Chapter 308, The 1,000 Corpse Sect's Plans. Cheng Fei Jun was struck awake by this smack, and the look he directed towards Ling Han was filled with terror. Being able to soar in the skies physically, the flower blossom tear. The flower blossom tear, someone who had transcended the mortal world and possessed power that could not be comprehended logically. Thus, this had to be an old monster who had lived for 100 or 200 years. As a result, it was nothing odd that he possessed the power of the flower blossom tear, nor was it strange that he had become an Earth-grade alchemist, because he had already reached such heights since who knows how many years ago. For such an old monster to deliberately disguise himself as a young man, what were his intentions? You had best explain obediently. Ling Han casually turned a hand and a force was exerted onto Cheng Fei Jun's body, causing such pain that he immediately exclaimed in agony. In this space, Ling Han was God. Cheng Fei Jun was really quite stubborn. Unfortunately, within the Black Tower, any kind of unimaginable torture method could be immediately brought into reality, and soon enough, Cheng Fei-jun had a mental breakdown. This was practically trying to oppose the will of a god. How could he possibly win? Ling Han actually had other means to obtain the information he wanted, and that was to directly search his soul. For him who had a sliver of the divine sense of the heaven tier added with the fact that they were both in the Black Tower, it would be extremely easy to accomplish this. However, the process of searching one's soul would be similar to reading every single experience and the whole history of a man unless it was so coincidental that the information he wanted would be immediately searched out. Since it was to flip through all the memories of another, he would have to go through his experiences as well, and seeing too much of another's experiences would definitely affect him as well. He might lose sight of which life was his, and which was Cheng Fei-jun's. Thus, unless it was absolutely necessary, Ling Han did not want to use soul-searching arts. Moreover, after the soul was searched, the person who had his soul searched would definitely die. This was because his soul had been drawn out of his body and flipped through bit by bit, so it would naturally be completely destroyed. Of course, the most important reason that Ling Han did not want to view Cheng Fei-jun's whole life was to avoid dirtying his eyes. And there was no need to mention Luo Jifeng. His worldview could possibly be completely obliterated. He did not care much about whether Cheng Fei-jun would die or not. After all, even if he did not kill the latter now, he would kill him at a later time anyways. For every question Ling Han asked, Cheng Fei-jun replied. Ling Han was naturally able to distinguish whether he was lying to him or not. Strictly speaking, Cheng Fei-jun was not a member of the Thousand Corpse sect, because he had never cultivated corpse chi. About 10 years ago, Cheng Fei-jun was merely an extremely talented newbie in the field of alchemy, but it was right at that time that he was found by a powerful elite of the Thousand Corpse sect, who promised him a great reward and pulled him into the Thousand Corpse sect. After a trial period of 3 years, he had obtained ample trust and received a considerable number of ancient pill formulae, and even obtained the personal notebook of an ancient great alchemist, which instantly caused his alchemical skills to sharply improve. Before that, the Thousand Corpse sect did not have him do anything specific, and only required him to improve his alchemical skills as much as possible to prepare for the big business in future. Improving his own alchemical skills was his pursuit in the first place, so Cheng Fei-jun would naturally not refuse. Thus, he began to walk farther and farther, as well as more and more successful on the path of alchemy. About a year ago, the Thousand Corpse sect gave him a strange fire, and paid an exorbitant price to help him fuse with it. It was also because of this that he was able to become a black-grade high-level alchemist when he was only in the Gushing Spring tier, and he was just flourishing in the limelight. And it was at this time that he received a mission from the Thousand Corpse sect when Long Yongchang and the other two passed on. He was to take control of the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. After which, through the authority he possessed, he was to add corpse chi into the medicine that would enter into the 9 nations of the desolate north and transform all of the 9 nations of the desolate north into a land of the dead. If one came into extended contact with corpse chi, a living person would slowly be transformed into a special kind of corpse soldier that would be able to devour other corpse soldiers in order to upgrade their own power. It was similar to raising insects one, and a corpse king would emerge at the end. With the huge numbers living in the 9 nations of the desolate north, this corpse king could possibly be a gold-armored corpse, or even a second-tier gold-armored corp. As for how to make Long Yongchang and the other two die at the same time, the Thousand Corpse sect would naturally send one of their elites to accomplish this task, so there was no need for Cheng Fei-jun to worry about it. What he had to do was to transform the 9 nations of the desolate north into a land of the dead after he had taken over. After understanding the whole story, Ling Han waved a hand and imprisoned Cheng Fei-jun anyways. Now that he had entered the Black Tower, his life or death was merely a thought from Ling Han. He could possibly be useful in future, so Ling Han decided to simply imprison him first. He did the same to the scholar boy. At least, only when Ling Han left the Fallen Moon Gorge would he release the latter. This Thousand Corpse sect did not have much relation with Rong Huanxian. It looked like there had been a split in the inheritance of this ancient great sect. Part of it was inherited by Rong Huanxian, whereas the other part was obtained by another. Moreover, this person was secretly developing it rapidly towards prosperity. He was so ambitious that he planned to kill the 100 million people of the 9 nations of the desolate north and refine a corpse king through this process. This was really deranged. Completely by accident, he actually unraveled such a great evil scheme. It was really a great coincidence and very fortunate. Ling Han was also filled with a bit of lingering fear. Because if he had really walked off without a second thought, once Long Yongchang and the other 2 Earth-grade alchemists died, it was only a matter of course for Cheng Fei-jun to rise up and take over. For a small place like the 9 nations of the desolate north, there was actually no need for 3 Earth-grade alchemists to stand by here. It was because the 3 of them had broken through here that they had remained here. In truth, when they had been assigned here, they were only black-grade high-level alchemists. Thus, there was absolutely no problem with the plans of the Thousand Corpse sect. With Cheng Fei-jun's current reputation and power, if Ling Han did not step out, who would be able to compete? And if this plan of the Thousand Corpse sect was really put into action, there would practically be no chance for anyone to survive in all the 9 nations of the desolate north. Even with the protection of the new Rain Emperor and the Da Yuan King, how could Ling Dongxing and the others possibly be spared? Thus, Ling Han felt lingering fear. If something like that had really happened, even if he destroyed the Thousand Corpse sect 10,000 times, what use was there? He definitely had to destroy this Thousand Corpse sect. Otherwise, even if they failed this time, there would still be a next time and another after that, and he wouldn't be able to guard himself against it. Family was Ling Han's reverse scale. He would definitely not allow anyone harm those close to him. So, Thousand Corpse sect, you should continue to be buried in the dust of history. However, the current Thousand Corpse sect had already reached a massive size, and it was not only through bold words that he could successfully destroy them. Though Luo Jifeng was in the spiritual pedestal tier, he did not have a high position in the Thousand Corpse sect, and Cheng Fei-jun was completely unclear about the detailed power scale in the Thousand Corpse sect. If this sect had already been revived for a very, very long time, then it wouldn't be anything strange for them to have one or even a few ultimate elites of the Shattering Void tier. After all, it was currently a booming era for the martial arts. Moreover, in history, the Thousand Corpse sect had also possessed ultimate elites of the 10th tier as well. Ling Han scratched his head. All the demons and monsters had really appeared in this lifetime. A day later, the auction was held as scheduled. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion status in the Fallen Moon Gorge was not something that could be compared to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, but the former was similarly established in an extremely large building, which was constructed as a very traditional auction house. It had a total of 5 floors and was designed in a way that the middle part was empty. This place could at most accommodate 1,000 people at one time, so it couldn't really be considered small. Though Ling Han had not gotten his proof of identity as an Earth-grade alchemist, that was merely an issue of procedure. As a result, he enjoyed the highest level of treatment from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and possessed a private room on the 5th floor. Long Yongchang and the other 2 big bosses also arrived. From the look of things, the blue-scale demonic fruit was also very attractive to them, so Ling Han considered whether he should discuss with them and ask them to allow him to have the blue-scale demonic fruit. But what caused Ling Han shock was the fact that there were actually other guests in the private room on the 5th floor. He saw with his own eyes a woman who was completely hidden in a cloak enter into the room. Why was he so sure that it was a woman? When her body moved, that slender waist and plump behind, as well as her towering B****** were completely outlined. Chapter 309 Ling Han of 2 Lives. Chapter 309 Ling Han of 2 Lives. Darkangel _ Afterwards, an ordinary-looking elder appeared and entered another private room. The most important thing for the Spirit Treasures Pavilion to ensure was fair practice in their business. Thus, since these 2 people were able to enter a private room on the 5th floor, this obviously meant that they, or the party they represented, was at least not weaker than the status of an Earth-grade low-level alchemist. That elder was in the flower blossoming tier. Ling Han was a bit surprised. It was indeed quite impressive that the auction today would actually tempt a powerful elite of the flower blossoming tier to come. A stream of people continued to enter, and soon after, he heard a very distinctive voice. Fairy Kai, what a coincidence to see you again. We are really fated, so why don't we sit together? Hihi. From the day before yesterday until now, we've met for a total of 17 times. There were actually as many as 17 times. Then it really seems like we are definitely fated. Fairy Kai, looking at me today, don't you think I'm a little bit more perverted? Get lost. Ling Han glanced out of the window and looked downwards, where he saw Jiyu Fenghua, who was currently chasing closely behind Kai Hualan. The pervert was grinning happily, eagerly following her. The two of them also came upstairs, but they did not come to the 5th floor. Apparently, they were not yet qualified to sit in the private rooms here. As for whether they were on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th floor, Ling Han did not have so much free time that he would activate the Eye of Truth to determine that. So the outsider martial artists the younger people of the 9 nations of the desolate north had seen were these two. In the private room, Guang Yuan and the others felt this was really very much a novelty to them. Normally, they were not qualified to enter this kind of private rooms. Even if the decorations and adornments around them were nothing too shocking, they still toured around the room, touching this and that, feeling that everything was uncommon. Liu Yutong and Li Sai-chan were girls, so they naturally had to take care of their image. As a result, they sat all prim and proper. Hu Niu, on the other hand, did not bother much and continued clinging to Ling Han's arms, laughing. After a while, the auction finally began. Ling Han was bored and leaned forward to sleep. Hu Niu, meanwhile, endlessly teased him with her little hands. The adult and child played joyously and harmoniously, making Liu Yutong and Li Sai-chan, who were watching, feel extremely envious, wanting nothing more than to take Hu Niu's place. The two girls exchanged a look and nodded simultaneously. They both felt that they could not be careless just because Hu Niu was little. This little girl could not be underestimated. Moreover, after another 10 years, the little girl should have grown up into a big girl, and it would be too late by that time to guard against her. Guard against fire, guard against thieves, and guard against Hu Niu. Everyone, the item that is going to be presented to all of you now is a treasure from the ancient era, and possesses a high symbolic significance, the auctioneer said, spittle flying everywhere. And that is the alchemy furnace that was once used by the inventor of the 3 Fire Guide, and acclaimed as the Alchemy Emperor, Grandmaster Ling Han. Ling Han, Guang Yuan, Liu Yutong, and the others all turned to look at Ling Han. They could naturally tell that this Ling Han was not their Ling Han, but the two of them actually shared the same name and they were both geniuses of alchemy, so they could not help but be astonished. Haha, I heard there is also a person here named Ling Han. A cold voice was suddenly heard from one of the private rooms. It was a very old voice. He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, to actually dare to have the same name as the Alchemy Emperor. Haha, he really has overestimated his own abilities. It's nothing strange to have the same name, but how accomplished was Ling Han, Grandmaster Ling, 10,000 years ago? To have the same name as he really deserves to die. This was the voice of a girl. She had a delicate voice, but it was filled with mockery. Though he could not tell which private room these two voices came from, he could confirm they were from the 5th floor, which made Ling Han instantly recall the cloaked woman and the elite of the flower-blossoming tier he had seen earlier. Ling Han did not know whether to laugh or to be angered, because both of them were he, but one Ling Han was praised to the heavens whereas the other was stepped harshly and crushed underfoot, making him feel like he was trapped between laughter and tears. It was really a coincidence, but who asked the two of them to have the same name? Could it be that small tower had done it deliberately? I don't know who that Grandmaster Ling from 10,000 years ago is, but the current Ling Han is only 17 years old, but is already an Earth-grade alchemist. No matter where, he would deserve the name of a genius of alchemy, and this is still called overestimating his own abilities. Liu Yutong was displeased and immediately began to defend Ling Han. Li Sai-chan nodded as well and said, I am an alchemist too, so I know a bit about that Grandmaster Ling from 10,000 years ago. That Grandmaster became an Earth-grade low-level alchemist only when he was 30. After that, he became an Earth-grade mid-level alchemist 10 years later, Earth-grade high-level 20 years later, and then became a Heaven-grade alchemist 30 years after that. He's also the youngest Heaven-grade alchemist in history. After that, he broke through the limitation of Heaven-grade 50 years later, and was respectfully acclaimed as the Alchemy Emperor. These words were factual, without the slightest bit of exaggeration. It was recorded as such in the ancient records. But when put together with the words that Liu Yutong had said previously, it was more than obvious. 10,000 years ago, Ling Han had only become an Earth-grade alchemist when he was 30 years old, but what about the current Ling Han? 17 years old. Putting aside how his future accomplishment would be like, but merely comparing his current accomplishment, that was definitely slightly superior to the Ling Han of that generation. Thus, the elder and the girl in the two private rooms were instantly silenced. Who asked Ling Han to be indeed much younger than that Ling Han? Yet Ling Han smiled in spite of himself and shook his head. He had all the memories of his last lifetime, which meant that he was standing on the foundations that had accumulated in his last life and continuing to advance from there, so he was naturally going to exceed his previous lifetime. How could these two lifetimes be put together and compared? Still, he was a bit curious. Though the Ling Han of his last life had been acclaimed as the Alchemy Emperor, he had already died for so many years. Why would these two people still be so reverent about him? Most alchemists knew that these two Ling Han shared the same name, but none of them actually came out to rebuke Ling Han. How baffling, and moreover, there were two of them. He, please do not hurt the peace amongst you, esteemed guests. Let us come back to auctioning off this alchemy furnace. Previously, I've said, this is the alchemy furnace that was once used by the ancient Grandmaster Ling Han, and the materials used to construct it are excellent. Unfortunately, it is already damaged. Thus, it can only be taken as an ornament and a token of remembrance. The auctioneer hurriedly soothed the atmosphere. He paused, then continued, something that the ancient Grandmaster Ling has once used is very meaningful. Thus, we can of course not sell it cheaply, or it would be very disrespectful to Grandmaster Ling. Thus, the starting price for this alchemy furnace is 1,000 origin crystals, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. His words had just fallen, and already there were bidders placing their bids. Listening to the voices, it was Long Yongchang and the other two big bosses of alchemy. That was true, the name of the ancient Ling Han was too well reputed. The things that he had once used were like totems, a pillar of mental support, and possessed a high symbolic significance for the alchemists of the current time period. Within only a while, the price had soared to 10,000, and it was still rising. Very quickly, the price had broken through the high boundary of 50,000. Ling Han was astonished. Could it be that Long Yongchang and the others had come for the alchemy furnace he had used before? To be honest, that alchemy furnace was indeed something good. It was forged from purple moon and stars iron, so its heat conduction and pressure resistance was indeed great. Still, it was already damaged, so it could not possibly be used again for pill concoction, and from the looks of it, it was extremely heavily damaged. Even if one would recycle the materials used to make this alchemy furnace, there would not be much left. Thus, the actual value of this alchemy furnace would be around 10,000 origin crystals, but the current bid had already exceeded that sum by a few times. Chapter 310 Fierce Competition. Chapter 310 Fierce Competition. Darkangel _ This was merely an alchemy furnace that Ling Han had once used before, and now the price of this alchemy furnace that only had symbolic value was still soaring. Soon, it had broken through the high limit of 10,000 origin crystals, but none of the three big bosses of alchemy had any intention to give up, and were still continuing to add their bids. It seemed as if they would not give up unless they had emptied all their savings. These three alchemists are truly in love with the Grandmaster Ling Han from 10,000 years ago. Guang Yuan exclaimed ruefully. That's right. It's already over 10,000 origin crystals. How many times has this price exceeded its real values? Zhu Wuju nodded as well. Ling Han's expressions instantly turned dark. He did not need this kind of true love. Liu Yutong and Li Sai-chan thought that Ling Han was unhappy because he could not compare to the Ling Han from 10,000 years ago, and hurriedly comforted him. Hu Niu was more direct. She gave him a kiss on his cheek and giggled. However, Long Yongchang and the others did not have any intention to give up. The bid soared up to 200,000, and was getting closer and closer to 300,000, making everyone dumbstruck. They were dumbfounded by, firstly, the determination of these three alchemists, and secondly, by how wealthy alchemists were. 300,000 origin crystals, what kind of concept was that? Even for these three big bosses of alchemy, 300,000 origin crystals should be a serious expense. After all, they usually only concocted black-grade alchemical pills, and black-grade alchemical pills were usually sold for silver and gold. Moreover, these three alchemists had to be in the process of trying to break through to become Earth-grade mid-level alchemists. Every time they failed the attempt, what kind of astronomical price would they have to pay for the ingredients they had used? These ingredients definitely had to be bought with origin crystals. Thus, it was indeed impressive that these three alchemists managed to save 300,000 origin crystals, but they had probably reached their limits. Indeed, after the bid had reached 30,000, the three big bosses of alchemy were obviously lacking in confidence. Finally, the price was set at 332,853 origin crystals. Why were there scraps? That was because Longyong Chang and his companions had really given it their all, and taken out all the origin crystals they had on them. The highest bid had been placed by Li Sai Yuan. He could not help but look happy. He could finally get hold of the alchemy furnace that was once used by the alchemy emperor. This was a totem, and a symbol of significance. "Is there anyone interested in bidding?" the auctioneer asked. He was extremely shocked that the bid reached such a high level, but at the same time, it was reasonable to him. His shock was because this was merely a damaged alchemy furnace, but who asked it to be once used by the alchemy emperor? In the eyes of his fans, not just 300,000, even 1 million was worth it. 400,000. It was at this moment that a young, melodic female voice was heard. She placed her bid very calmly, but it gave everyone a shock. That was 400,000 origin crystals, not 400,000 gold and silver coins. Linghan had heard it very clearly. This girl was precisely one of the two people that had mocked him just now. He had been curious previously, since these two people admired the he from 10,000 years ago, why did they not even say one word when the auction was ongoing? So it seemed that they were confident of the outcome, and directly played a direct kill. True, after so much bidding, she was naturally aware of the limits of Longyong Chang and the others, thus the first bid she placed was a direct kill, and she would be able to save as much money as possible. 500,000. Another voice was heard. This one was rough and old. It was precisely the voice of the other person who had mocked Linghan previously, the elder. 600,000. The girl increased her bid without hesitation, as if this 600,000 was merely paper money. 700,000. The elder did not cower at all. 900,000. This time, it was Longyong Chang's voice. The three big bosses of alchemy must have combined forces and pooled their respective origin crystals. 1 million, the girl and the elder spoke up at the same time. 1,500,000. The girl paused a while, and directly called out an astronomical price. It seemed like she was an impatient character, and did not want to add the bid bit by bit like before anymore. 2 million. The elder was unafraid as well. These were two super rich people. At the beginning, who would have thought that the real competitors for this alchemy furnace would be the two of them? Putting aside their identities, merely the fact that they could take out 2 million origin crystals was enough to qualify them to sit in a private room on the 5th floor. For the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, which was a business establishment, anyone with enough money would be their dad. Linghan could not help but be rueful, and mumbled, "I have used a considerable number of alchemy furnaces by now, so should I consider selling them off as well?" This caused Liu Yutong and Li Sai Chan to laugh. They thought that he was laughing at himself. There was no way that they would be able to figure out that the two Linghan were actually one and the same. After the price had reached such a high level, even Longyong Chang and his companions could only become observers. They felt that it was really a pity. That was an alchemy furnace that had once been used by the alchemy emperor, and if it could be displayed in the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, that would definitely make this place into the Holy Land for all alchemists. Yet they did not know that as long as Linghan once again reached the apex in future, this place, as the important location that Linghan had broken through to Earth-grade alchemist, would definitely become the holy land for alchemists. 300,000, 2 stars origin crystals. The girl once again placed a bid, and it instantly gave everyone a scare. In theory, if the grade of origin crystals was raised, their value would be tenfold, but in truth, no one would be willing to spend high-grade origin crystals like money. Just put it this way. If the same amount of 1-star origin crystals would allow one to successfully break through in 3 years' time, then using the same amount of 2-star origin crystals would only take 1 year. That was right. Time was the most important factor, especially for those martial artists who were below the flower blossom tier. They only had a lifespan of merely 100 years. Thus, the earlier and the younger they broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier, the more time they would have to attempt breaking through to the flower blossom tier. Once they managed to break through, they would be able to cast off their mortal body. 1-star origin crystals were made by the spiritual ocean tier martial artists, and were extremely helpful to the cultivation of anyone in the body refining, the element gathering, the gushing spring and the spiritual ocean tier, as they were able to supply enough origin power. However, for those in the spiritual pedestal tier, the effects of 1-star origin crystals would be greatly discounted, and only 2-star origin crystals would have enough effect. And for those in the flower blossom tier, aside from the fact that 1-star origin crystals could be spent like money, they were complete trash. Thus, the higher the grade of origin crystals, not only the better the effects, but also the more the purposes. There were some extremely valuable spirit medicines that not only needed to be purchased with origin crystals, they might even need 4-star, 5-star, or even 6-star origin crystal. Thus, the true value of 300,000 2-star origin crystals far exceeded the value of 300,000 1-star origin crystals. 400,000 2-star origin crystals, the elder was similarly calm. Everyone was so shocked that their eyeballs looked ready to pop out of their heads. What kind of concept was 400,000 2-star origin crystals? That would need 40,000 spiritual pedestal tier martial artists to work on concocting them for a whole year. In the whole North region, were there even 10,000 spiritual pedestal tier martial artists? Most importantly, these two seemed to be completely calm, and looked like they didn't care at all. Were they really from the North region? Ling Han was also very curious. He could still understand if Long Yongchang and his companions fought over the alchemy furnace. But what were these two fighting over it for? He could not help but activate the Eye of Truth and gazed at them. At first, he found the elder, but the latter immediately sensed his presence. He gave a heavy humph, and a sound wave spread out. Woo! Ling Han gave a muffled groan, and instantly a stream of blood gushed out from his right eye. He actually experienced much suffering from this one blow. The flower blossom tear, that was power that exceeded the mortal realm. Ling Han, Liu Yutong and the others were extremely shocked. Why did he suddenly cry tears of blood out of the blue like this? Only Hu Niu fixed a stare at a particular direction in her alertness. It was precisely where that elder was. Obviously, the little girl was not glaring arbitrarily. Instead, she had really sensed something out of the ordinary, and immediately looked vicious. Chapter 311 An Astonishing Discovery. Chapter 311 An Astonishing Discovery. Ling Han held on to Hu Niu. That old man was too powerful. Even though Hu Niu possessed a terrifying speed, in front of someone in the flower blossoming tier, that would have no effect at all. The latter would only need to release a burst of aura, and that would be enough to kill the little girl with a shockwave. "It's all right," he said with a shake of his head as he withdrew a towel and wiped off the blood. He could feel that his right eye was still faintly aching, but once the indestructible heaven scroll circulated, the pain instantly disappeared. In a mere few minutes, his right eye was completely back to normal. It really deserved the name of the indestructible heaven scroll. Even such a fragile body part like the eye could be easily healed. And after a few minutes of tug-of-war, this alchemy furnace was successfully purchased by that cloaked woman. She paid an astronomical price reaching 1 million 2-star origin crystals. With so many origin crystals, as long as I have broken through to the spiritual ocean tier, I would probably be able to break through to the 9th layer in less than a month, right? Ling Han thought. Origin crystals were used to create an environment filled with origin power, which would speed up the rate of cultivation. He once again focused his sight to find that cloaked woman. In a short while, he had found her, but what surprised him was that the moment he found that girl, she had coincidentally stood up. Her hands were holding onto the alchemy furnace that she had just successfully purchased, and she was actually planning to leave. In other words, she was purposely here for this alchemy furnace, and now that the alchemy furnace was in her possession, she was naturally going to leave. With the eye of truth, Ling Han glimpsed a sliver of her face, and could not help but be slightly awed. This girl was really beautiful, not one bit less beautiful than Kai Hualan. However, whether it was this girl, or that elder, they weren't alchemists at all. Ling Han did not sense one bit of the air that an alchemist should possess on them. There was no need to doubt this. As the alchemy emperor, if Ling Han was still unable to distinguish whether someone was an alchemist or not, then he should really buy a piece of tofu and kill himself with it. Two people who were obviously not alchemists, yet were willing to spend over 1 million 2-star origin crystals for a damaged alchemy furnace. Why would that be? Previously, they were indeed very reverent towards his previous self, but if one claimed that they would pay such a high price for the sake of their admiration, it was a little incomprehensible. The cloaked woman left, and the elder in the flower-blossoming tier left as well. The two of them shared the same target, which was this alchemy furnace. Now that the alchemy furnace had found its home, they would naturally have no reason to continue staying here. It was really baffling. He could only take them as real rich people who were truly in love with the Ling Han of his last lifetime. After such a major climax, the subsequent proceedings of the auction not only made Ling Han sleepy, there were also a considerable number who had begun to doze off in their seats downstairs. Some were even snoring. Cough, cough. The auctioneer hurriedly adjusted the sequence of the auction and took out a considerably valuable item in advance for the auction, finally managing to make the environment lively again. After another half an hour, an item on auction attracted Ling Han's interest. It was a sculpture that looked like a scorpion. It was completely black all over, and exuded a cold metallic light. According to the studies of a few of our experienced appraisers, this should be an antique from 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. There are some ancient words on it, which are slightly different from what we have today. After deciphering, they can roughly be interpreted as Scorpio Palace Hall, life and death, reincarnation for 10,000 lifetimes, the auctioneer said. This should be a token, a key, and it should be able to open the Scorpio Palace Hall of one of the 12 heaven mystery realms. Sure, his words had just fallen when everyone stood up. All of them looked very excited. The 12 heaven mystery realms were one of the great mystery realms that were rumored to exist. They would open every 100 years, and one would be rendered dumbstruck by the abundant spiritual chi within them. A day of cultivation within could be equal to 10 days or even 100 days of cultivation in the outside world. As a result, innumerable spiritual herbs grew within. Since the mystery realm only opened every 100 years, not only were they mature enough, but due to the spiritual chi within, the quality of these spiritual herbs was shockingly high. But this was not the point. The point was that the 12 heaven mystery realms had 12 mysterious palace halls, and according to the rumor, the greatest treasures of the mystery realm were hidden within cultivation techniques, spirit tools, martial arts techniques, alchemical pills. There was once a fortunate man who entered into the Ares Palace Hall. As a result, his fame soared greatly. In the end, he became an ultimate elite of the heaven tier, and furthermore was one of those extremely strong types. If it wasn't for the fact that the era he was born in was greatly suppressed by the natural environment, which meant that no one in the Shattering Void tier could emerge, his accomplishment would definitely not be limited to the Heaven tier, but he'd enter the Shattering Void tier, or even successfully shatter the void to become a god. And to enter the 12 palace halls, the corresponding key was needed. According to the examination of our pavilion, this possibly should be the key that will open up the Scorpio Palace Hall, but it could also be counterfeit. Our pavilion cannot be certain of this, because there are some things on this sculpture that we can't confirm. The auctioneer returned back to the main topic. Instantly, a considerable number looked disappointed. When they thought about it, it was logical. If this key was real, then why would it be auctioned off here? If it was taken to the central region, there would be many more rich people there, and it would be able to get a really high price there. Even so, there were still many who were interested in this sculpture. What if it just so happened to be real? Ling Han, do you think it's real or fake? Liu Yutong could not help but ask curiously. Ling Han focused his eyes and the eye of truth was activated. The form of the sculpture instantly peeled apart in front of his gaze. Every layer disappeared, and when he saw something hidden deep within the sculpture, he could not help but grin because it was actually a piece of paper on which these words were written. "You've fallen for the trick, this is a fake, ha ha ha." But when he saw the name written last, he could not help but tremble, and wore an expression of disbelief. "What is it?" Liu Yutong and Li Sai-chan asked quickly. "It's nothing." Ling Han waved his hand, but everyone could see something was off with his expression. How could Ling Han not lose his composure? Because that was a drawing of a naked woman. He recognized with a single glance that penmanship. It was his showy disciple, Jiang Yufeng. He was not the slightest bit surprised that Jiang Yufeng would do something so pointless, but what shocked him was that this stone sculpture was rumored to be something from 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. But Jiang Yufeng should have been a character from 10,000 years ago. Even if Jiang Yufeng broke through to the shattering void tier, he would only have a lifespan of over 1,000 years, so how could he have managed to survive until 5,000 or 6,000 years ago? Unless Jiang Yufeng advanced yet another step and stepped into the realm of gods, becoming a god himself. Though he didn't know whether gods could be immortal, but just look at Azura Demon Emperor. He had been suppressed for several tens of thousands years and split into 9, but was still alive and kicking, wasn't he? Jiang Yufeng was still alive. Had he become a god? Then what about his 3 other disciples? Were they all still alive? One had to know that the reason that Ling Han had been willing to take the 4 of them as disciples was either because they had astonishing talent in alchemy or logic-defying comprehension abilities in martial arts. Otherwise, for someone like him who had his whole focus on alchemy, how would he have eked out so much time to teach disciples? If Jiang Yufeng was able to become a god, then his other 3 disciples should also be qualified. Then wouldn't he still have a chance to reunite with his 4 disciples? Haha, he really wanted to see the expressions on their faces at that time. It would definitely be very interesting. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.